Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday show here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Dr. Darren Adair. How are you overall? Are you surviving?
Surviving is a word for it. Doing okay. Generally okay.
Yeah, so this is one of many of the live call-in shows here on the Line Network. And I've done live call-in shows for like 20 years now. You can call in, and we are looking forward to having conversations about what you believe in and why you think we should agree. If you have like an esoteric God belief or supernatural belief, and you can tell us why you believe in a fashion that's useful to discuss, we can either agree with you or not agree with you as to whether or not you're justified or whether or not we would be justified under similar circumstances. But the real deal here is that we live in a world where people believe different things and for different reasons. And when we have difficulty getting agreement on even matters of, for example, scientific consensus about the reliability and benefit and safetiness of vaccinations and things like that, it's not surprising that it's virtually impossible to get strong agreement on things related to the supernatural or gods, because we don't have any way to test those things that I'm aware of. And yet people keep running around saying, basically they're claiming to have detected what may be undetectable or maybe non-existent. And I'm not just being dismissive there. That's what we see all over, all the time. And that's what I used to think as well. I was a former the Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian, was studying to be a pastor, found my way out. Now I'm doing this. I do have one absolutely whiny drama-based complaint to launch at the start of the show. And then hopefully maybe we can put this to bed for a while. I left the atheist community of Austin several years ago. And when I left, I warned people about it. If you want to keep working with them, that's fine, is what I said. But I let them know what the problem was and people could see what happened with me. For some reason, people keep having bad experiences with the ACA, either with the organization or with a board member or a host on one of the shows or a moderator, whatever. And then they email me for help. So let me be really clear. I have no insight into the board of directors at the ACA or the members there. Nobody should. I have no idea what's going on because they answer to no one. The members have no say in the organization, and the board listens to their lawyers. And for all I know, they're all in violation of or changed their term limit policy. It doesn't matter because they don't answer anybody, and there's nothing you can do about it. When people reach out to me to say, oh, are you back with the ACA? Because I see they posted clips of you. No, those are old clips they post in order to pay their bills and pay the lawyers and blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, I have this problem with them and they did this and they did this and they did this. Sorry. You saw what happened to me. I don't know why you would expect your experience to be different or better when I am a multi-time president of that organization and dedicated 18 years of my life to it. I've moved on. I would like to keep moving on. So please stop emailing me about the atheist community of Austin. I will not help. All you're doing is stirring up old shit and trauma. I have no interest, no say, and you are all already fucking warned. So enter at your own risk. Leave me out of it. I got shit to do. So welcome to the Sunday show here on the line, where we've absolutely got stuff to do. Yesterday was LineCon Online number 2, I believe. I know Arden gave a talk there. I figured before we get started, let me remind you, it's time to call in. If you have one of those God beliefs, if you have a supernatural belief, if you have some point of disagreement or whatever else that you'd like to engage with, you've got Dr. Adair. Wow. Dr. Aaron Adair here and myself. We are here. I have no expertise in anything at all. Aaron has expertise in more shit than I can even imagine. And it won't matter at all because we're all just people trying to have a conversation. You can call 720-619-2288, or you can click on a link down below in the description. If you're accessing by your mobile phone through the browser, please listen carefully. Most mobile phones will time out and cut the audio, and most browsers on most mobile phones will also time out and cut the audio. So if your call goes live and you're calling using that interface, you're going to tap your phone to wake it up and then tap the browser screen to wake it up as well so that it starts transmitting audio. Other than that, Arden, how was LineCon Online yesterday?
It was really fun. It started with Jimmy. Jimmy gave a talk on kind of the idea that no faith is harmless, and specifically spent a good amount of time talking about like astrology. My talk was on kind of debunking the notion that when trans people are saying they have a gender identity, that is akin to saying we have a gendered soul. So I kind of went through the naturalistic reasons that we know trans identities exist, that these are like persistent things that you could forcibly, surgically, or alter or torture someone over and you still couldn't change them. And then Justin from Deconstruction Zone did a really cool talk kind of exposing some like biblical, it was called biblical blunders, where, you know, he would look at sort of Old Testament prophecies that get referenced in the New Testament, and when the authors in the New Testament get it wrong, what those prophecies in the Old Testament were, or not prophecies, but just like, you know, they would be like, oh, this guy was this guy's son, and it like that is not what that verse said in the Old Testament at all. It was really interesting. So yeah, those talks will get posted to our $5 and up patrons very soon. I know I had initially said it's the next day, and it's going to be a little bit slower than that, but they are going up to those $5 and up patrons. And then they'll be posted on YouTube eventually. So check it out next time.
Awesome. There's a lot going on, and we are constantly adding more, and we have no idea about the future of this channel or any other channel in the United States that is currently being, where free speech is under massive assault from the fascist administration that is scrubbing websites of factual information and scientific information and going after comedians and anyone on the left and making I'm already a candidate to be designated a violent extremist despite denouncing violence. And if they get their way on the other thing, I will then become a TIVE in the NVE category, because I dare to believe, not even act upon it, but believe that anti-trans rhetoric is harmful to trans people. And literally the Heritage Foundation, in their list of things that they want me to be, others to be declared violent extremists about, is anyone who believes that failing to accept or actively reject what they're calling trans ideology gets you labeled, that their failure to do that causes harm, emotional, physical, or otherwise, to trans people. If you believe that, you are a domestic extremist terrorist, according to the Heritage Foundation and what they would like to get the FBI to implement. It may never happen. It may happen tomorrow. And so things are really up in the air and potentially scary. But we've got lines open, and our first caller actually has a question that is completely science-based, although I think there may be a typo in the description. So Aaron's going to earn his pay immediately on today's show. Doric is calling from Czechia, saying scientists created matter from nothing, and atheists always say you can't create something from nothing. I don't know that atheists always say that. I think theists frequently say that. I don't know. What's that?
I said theists. Maybe the call screener noticed it wrong.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I thought that might be a typo. That's why I said that. So anyway, Dork, you're on with Dr. Aaron Adair. What's going on?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm a political philosopher, and I like having conversations with people and actually having conversations with theists and trying to argue with them, like in a mostly academic sense, not like the colloquial sense.
Dork, I apologize. You're like really close to the mic or something, and it's hot, and so it's scratching and breaking up a little bit. So I just want to make you aware. We'll make do and try and do what we can, but it's getting a little hard to hear. So
is this better?
That seems to be better. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Although now we hear ourselves echoed back.
Yeah. Yeah, I was on a headset. I just took off the headset from the phone. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, now you're on. Please continue.
Yeah. Does it seem to be better? Sorry about that.
Yes. Continue.
It's okay right now.
Yeah, so I like to have these conversations, and one thing that constantly comes up, I think you know this by heart by now, or not something cannot come out of nothing. But recently I read a paper come out of the University of British Columbia that scientists did some science magic, any technology sufficiently advanced enough kind of thing, and some like electron positron pair just pops out, and it's just this very interesting thing that like the God of the Gaps seems to get smaller. But I always see that like if you try to corner a theist on something, that they completely repeat to another talking point, and most of it is not like grounded and doesn't make sense to me as a person trained in thinking. And I don't know how to have these conversations anymore, so I would like to have your guidance and expertise at this.
So I have to admit the thing you're talking about, I have to do some digging on, but very, very quickly, there is a press release from...
We need to absolutely mute the caller because we're hearing ourselves echoed back. So let me mute the caller, and now you can continue.
Okay. Yeah, audio is better this way. So there's a press release out of the University of British Columbia, as the caller was saying. And yeah, the headline there is something from nothing, physicists model vacuum tunneling in a 2D superfluid. And what it looks like is the creation of electron-positron pairs in the presence of a strong strong electrical field. Apparently, it's an effect that was predicted by Julian Swinger. Admittedly, this is stuff that I have not studied before, so it's new to me. I'm going to have to be kind of off the cuff here. But most fundamentally is this. It's not nothing, because they're using, in this case, a strong electric field to create these electron-positron pairs. Fundamentally, there is some phenomenon going on in the interaction between the electric field and the vacuum where there's enough energy to create electron-positron pairs. And also, for the audience's sake, a positron is just like an electron, except that it has a positive charge. It's the antimatter version of the electron. And when you have enough energy in one spot, you actually produce matter and its antimatter counterpart in equal quantity. So that seems to be what's going on here. But as for the details, I would have to dig into this much more. I would reluctantly call that something from nothing, because there's an external electric field. That's not nothing. Acting on the vacuum, which is filled with its own quantum fields. That's not nothing. It's only nothing in that there's nothing material there, in the sense of like atoms or particles that are suddenly becoming the stuff that we build cheeseburgers out of. It's interesting. It's absolutely fascinating that they've been able to do this, and that apparently was theorized 70-ish years ago, and only now is being shown to exist. So that's awesome. But I doubt this is going to make people like William Lane Craig shut up, because they'll still say electric fields aren't nothing, and he would be correct. and I don't want to give an argument to Bill Craig where he's correct.
I'm gonna unmute right after I add something. Basically, I'm gonna say the same thing that Aaron said, but in a slightly different way because I'm not a scientist. When theists talk about something can't come from nothing, they mean a philosophical ex nihilo or nex nihilo, a literal nothing, no properties, no nothing, nothing else. When scientists talk about nothing, particularly physicists and others, they're not talking about a philosophical nothing. For example, when Lawrence Krauss and I were touring, he wrote, a universe from nothing, and we talked about this over and over again. And what he means by a universe from nothing is essentially, and I'm going to get the language on this wrong, but Aaron might be able to correct it, and that is a mathematically neutral quantum state. Not that there isn't anything there, but that the math shows it as a nothing. And so everything you described is not something from nothing in the philosophical sense. And it may not even qualify in the something from nothing that Krauss and others proposed. But it might also be the same. I don't know. So let's unmute and see how we're doing.
Yeah. Excuse my ignorance on this. Like I said, I'm trained as a philosopher, not a physicist, so I just read the abstract and the maths and everything just completely goes over my head, of course. But it was an interesting explanation. But the wider point is that how do you have conversations with these people when it's shown that their position is not grounded or not logically consistent?
That wasn't shown. That wasn't shown. Yeah. No. If their position is you can't get something from nothing, first of all, they have no way to demonstrate that. It's just an assertion. But this is not a rebuttal to that. This is not a counter to their position at all.
No. I get that. No. In general terms, in other things, when they talk about the transcendental, there is no philosophical grounding for the transcendental, and you can argue about that, and they retreat to the next point. And some people think that you come off as aggressive or rude, Matt, but you really have the patience of a saint that I don't. So I'm really trying to get better at having these conversations with people, actually.
Well, I would stay away from scientific headlines that make sensationalized claims, because they're not a rebuttal to anything that the theists are proposing. One of the things that really annoys me is that the marketing news media processes that sensationalize, where everything is breaking news and everything is important and urgent and the biggest thing ever, has also impacted science communication. Recently, NASA basically announced that we have discovered what is probably, likely, possibly evidence for life on Mars. And it seems really strong. The specifics there are we're talking about kind of the very rudimentary sort of life, like in the realm of bacteria or something like that. Maybe not even that far. And it doesn't exist now. So the headlines go up, life on Mars. And then you have to be, hey, we're not talking about little green men. We're not talking about anything alive right now. We're talking about patterns that, because of the assessment, it's almost like finding a fossil of some of the first cells, maybe. And it's incredibly interesting and it's incredibly significant, but a lot more work needs to be done to figure out exactly what we're talking about and what the impact is. It's already amazing that we are able to land devices on Mars, do scientific exploration and analysis on Mars, send the data back, and in a very short period of time, a tiny workshop on a rather significant, rock, even though it's not the biggest one ever, has managed to produce information that makes the scientists go, holy crap, I think something like life was here or life was here. We already know that there is or was water. This this is the way science should be done. And it should be exciting on its own without doing the Life on Mars headline to try to get everybody to pay attention to it. And I can tell you right now that even if we found like living creatures on Mars scurrying around up there, that's not going to be an impact on the theists for the most part. And if scientists were able to, out of a quantum nothing, produce matter, and then go on to extrapolate that into self-replicating molecules, it still won't disprove these claims. These things are immune to challenges. That's why they survive. And so the frustration you feel, first of all, welcome to my life, but you just have to keep trying. And you find the ones that are willing to have a good conversation and change their mind. And you just have to say, you know what? I'm not going to convince everybody. And some of you are beyond my help. And maybe somebody else will find a way to explain it to you, which is one of the reasons why I love having co-hosts on that don't do things the same way I do, don't have the same expertise that I do. Because when I hit my wall, they sometimes come up with something I would have never thought of. And hopefully on rare occasions, vice versa. So you just got to keep trying.
Yeah, completely fair, and like I get your point there. So I see the headline like that, so I go into a show with a physicist, working physicist, and I try to understand it better. But as like a philosopher, I'm maybe a little bit stunted or like incapable. That like if somebody were to present some argument and show that my claim was groundless, or I had some logical inconsistency or failure in logic, that I couldn't maintain my position honestly. But yeah, when the conversation goes on and I experience that, okay, next point, I get really frustrated, and I think it's just something I need to work on personally.
Me too. So take breaks. And remember that in any one of those conversations, you're almost certainly not on a show, and there are almost certainly not other callers waiting. So just offer to stick a pen in it, go off and think about it, have them go off and think about it, and conversation up another time. You don't have to fix it all today, especially when things get frustrated. I'm in a slightly different position because I am here for 20 years under fire. And despite having an expertise in nothing, I seem to be forced to know and understand so many topics better than the average theist that it can look impressive to some, and it also looks weak to others. But at the end of the day, I've got to take calls. I've got to take other calls. I've got people on hold waiting. And because of that, Doric, we're going to let you go. Thanks for starting off the show with some fun science stuff, but we have other calls waiting.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. I don't want to take more of your time. Have a nice day.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
How often, Aaron, do you find yourself, like, I don't engage in these topics almost ever in my personal life. I'm a bit weird, though, because I do this pretty much all week. And the only time that I have a personal life that isn't tied to this stuff is like when I'm at a reptile expo, or if I'm hanging out with people that I don't know with some friends. And I get enough that I don't engage. Do you wind up having like conversations about religion and maybe in your case, more complete misunderstandings of science and the limitations?
Occasionally I'll have like some conversations with my wife on religious things, but it's not the normal part of my day-to-day experience. And honestly, for me, if I'm going to have those sorts of conversations, I'm thinking about them long term. I'm not going to try to browbeat them into believing me. What I'm going to try to do is say, hey, we clearly disagree on this sort of thing. Let's see how far back we can go and find out where we do agree on things, and then try to build from there. And that is rhetorically the best thing to do when it comes to arguments or debate. And also it's just good for being a human that wants to stay, with a community of saying, hey, we as a community believe this. Let's see what we can build from this. Start from the consensus and then go from there, rather than being the outlier and then screaming at everyone else for not following your propositions, even if they happen to be well evidenced.
All right, so we've got more callers lined up. 720-619-2288. If you're a God believer, if you have a supernatural belief, if you think you have some sort of belief that's warranted and that we've missed something. I mean, you've got a scientist and a general buffoon here today, both of whom are willing to be convinced if you can make a case. And another curious question for those, because I know there's somebody sitting out there going, here we go again. Here's these atheists asking for evidence of something that does not need evidence, could not have evidence. I don't need. I'd love to know why on earth people are willing to believe something and even look down on those who don't without evidence to support it. What is the justification for saying, I'm willing to bank my eternal possible future on something for which I don't have as much evidence as we do for the creating something from nothing? I mean, the article that I was glancing talked about, and I don't know what the hell's going on, because I don't do anything in here, but the article was about using superfluid helium in a vacuum. And so superfluid helium-4 is a wonder, they say. At a few atomic layers thick, it can be cooled very easily to a temperature where it's basically in a frictionless vacuum state. I understand what that means, but not fully. And then when they make that frictionless vacuum flow, instead of electron-positron pairs appearing, vortex-antivortex pairs will appear spontaneously, spinning in opposite directions, one to another. I mean, when you get past the headline and start reading it, I'm like, this is really cool, and this is something I want to understand at least a little bit more. I don't need to grasp it in detail. It's not my field. I'm not going to be writing papers on it. I'm not going to be engaging on debate. But it's nice to at least know, because if nothing else, somebody is going to present this as you theists say something can't come from nothing. Well, here's this. And then, as Aaron was pointing out, guys like William Lane Craig and others would be like, that's not the nothing we're talking about. It's not even in the ballpark of the nothing we're talking about. How do you start with super helium 4 and pretend like you started with nothing? It's,
I do want to note, though, when they're talking about a superfluid, as they say that, it has no internal friction called viscosity, in the kind of same way that you get certain materials really cold, they become superconductive and they have no electrical resistance. The really cool thing is, if you look at videos of helium-4 when it's in this superfluid state, you can actually see hey, now all of a sudden when it's chilled enough, it will go through holes that it couldn't go to before. It'll climb up walls and go over the edges all on its own. It almost feels like it's breaking gravity, but it's just nope, that's just what superfluids do.
Well, that explains how they're doing a part 2 to Wicked. Defying gravity. All right. We have Jamie's calling from Pennsylvania. Jamie's Buddhist pronouns they, them. Says there are Buddhists who can perform miracles, but they don't exist in the West. Why are they only in India? Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, Matt. So in Buddhism, there's kind of a claim that people can develop miracle powers if they meditate long enough and they pretty much live a certain lifestyle. So,
okay.
What would it say, though, if, I don't know, an argument for evidence being a person does what they say, they actually learn, the miracles that they say they would, and then they move to India and they never come back. Would that be a convincing reason to believe in the religion, or would there be something suspect about
that? So I'm really confused about moving to India and never coming back and how that's relevant. There is a claim.
Sorry.
I can do this miracle, and then there is either evidence to support that they can do that thing, or there isn't. Are you saying there's evidence to support miracles?
Well, I mean, yes, I would say there's evidence of it, but
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think things are convincing because I don't know.
Okay.
You would
Do
agree,
do
like written evidence isn't convincing for other people.
Well, so the evidence should either be convincing for everyone or not at all. Do you understand the difference between evidence for and claims and facts consistent with? Because an evidence for a miracle must be, and by the way, we haven't even defined what we mean by miracle, but I'm going to assume that we're going to go with the conventional thing of these people can do things that violate natural law, not just things that are mysterious or not understood, but violate natural law. I've never seen nor heard of any actual demonstration of anything, even in the ballpark of that. But we've had lots of claims. And so how would you go about verifying? Like, give me an example of a miracle that someone claims they can do and how you proved they did it.
A person claims they can swim through the dirt like it's water by just thinking about it. So how to prove it? You have them show it to two other people that say that yes, they actually did it.
I'm not saying what's your proposed way of demonstrating it, because also showing it to two other people is not a demonstration. But I was asking for one that you believe has happened. Do you believe that somebody swam through dirt the way they would swim through water?
I believe that someone told me that they saw that once, but I don't believe that it was actually what happened.
I don't know why we're dancing here, Jamie. You believe that somebody told you that. You know what? I believe that somebody told you that. I don't even have any evidence other than your claim, and I believe somebody told you that. But I also have people tell me stuff all the time that I have no good reason to believe is true. And many times people tell me things that I have good reason to believe is absolutely false. I'm saying you seem to be convinced that there are people who actually have performed miracles. I have zero interest in you telling me somebody once told me this, but I didn't believe them. That's kind of silly, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So do we have reason to think that anybody has done these things?
I guess not. Sorry, Matt.
I know. I appreciate the fact that you're being honest. You don't have to be sorry. It's just, how can we actually help, Jamie? Because it seems like you called in believing, hey, there are people who seem to be able to perform miracles, and then they only exist in India. I still don't know what the relevance of that was. Go ahead.
It's kind of the claim that, all the miracles happen in one place. If they were, wouldn't it make more sense they could happen anywhere?
I don't know, because I don't know the nature of the miracle. But when miracles happen in one place, it's usually because there isn't cameras or other ways to investigate and confirm it. Like when alien abductions take place, or when statues weep and then stop weeping, or when a stigmata occurs, or when a miraculous healing occurs. None of these, they don't seem to occur in the places where they can be properly investigated and documented. And maybe there are places in India where they can't be properly investigated and documented.
Okay. How would you go about investigating something if you thought it was a miracle?
Well, I wouldn't think it was a miracle until it had been confirmed to be a miracle. But Aaron, how would you go about investigating a claim like that somebody can swim through dirt like it's water?
Well, I would first want to see what research I can do in the immediately here, without having to leave the comfort of my room, about, hey, what's the documented story here? Who are the witnesses? What is the nature of the claim? Try to gather as much information as I can. And if I need to gather more, if I'm really interested in understanding where these stories are coming from and why, put on my shoes, get a plane ticket, and actually investigate the place personally and try to actually get more direct information about what's going on, what's being claimed, try to find the witnesses themselves, if I really wanted to get into that. If I then can see that the phenomenon itself exists, then I can start wondering, okay, what sorts of possible explanations could exist for this? And funny enough, I actually know how to swim through dirt like it's a fluid. And the way
Does it
you do
require
that,
a lot of air?
exactly. Yes, if you actually blow a lot of air underneath the dirt as it's coming through, it lowers the overall density, and then all of a sudden it turns into a fluid, and you can swim through it. When I was teaching high school, my students actually did this. We took a whole bunch of shot vacs, connected it to a big pile of sand, blew air into it, and then all of a sudden you could have like balls and toy boats floating in the sand just like it's water. So we know how to do it that way. I'm betting if people are claiming this is happening in whatever location, in whether it's in the Punjab region in India or if it's in New Delhi or wherever else, I doubt it's the fact that people are taking a whole bunch of shot facts and connecting it to the dirt. But I would want to go and see what's going on to understand why the claim even exists, and then knowing more about the claim, then trying to understand what is behind the phenomenon. If you want to see an example of someone doing things like that, I'm horrendous with names, but it was a skeptical investigator in India who was looking into weeping statues of Mary. People were saying, hey, the Virgin Mary, we have this statue here, and we see that like every so often she just like starts like looks like she has tears coming down her face. And this sort of Mary miracle is not that uncommon, claims of statues weeping or things like that. And the investigator went into this, trying to understand what was the cause of the phenomenon, because they could clearly tell from videos, there's definitely water coming out of the statue. Where's the water coming from? And he ultimately figured out what it was. There was a leaky toilet upstairs, and the water was going down the wall and being seeped into the statue. So these people that were collecting this water were literally collecting toilet water. And unfortunately, the congregants being told this were not happy with that result. And I think he's been living outside of India for the last several years because his life has been endangered staying back in his home country. But like I said, I'm horrendous with names, so I can't remember who to look up for that. But nonetheless, that is the really best way of figuring things out, is researching everything you can, testing things out, and if need be, going to the site of where the alleged miracle is to see what information might be left out in those miracle stories. Because very often, the thing that causes the story to become miraculous is that little detail that gets left out that makes it go from supernatural to mundane and maybe even a little bit disgusting.
Okay, that's helpful. One last thing, though, if I'm allowed to ask, would anything be obvious enough as a miracle? Like, I don't know, someone revives someone from dead that died like 2 days ago. Would that be convincing if they did that without needing further investigation, or would that not
Convincing
be,
of
would it
what?
be something?
Convincing of what? Because as I've said many times when debating the resurrection, if you, like, for example, when I was in debate with Mike Lacona, Mike suggested, hey, if somebody came up here and chopped my head off and you all walked into the other room and I came walking in a couple moments later alive with my head on, wouldn't that be proof of God's power to resurrect? And my answer was no. What it would confirm is that apparently, assuming we were able to investigate properly, you were dead and your head was removed, and now you are not dead and your head is attached, and we do not know why. There's a difference between the observation of an effect or an event and declaring what the cause may be. So when you see something like that happen, what you want to do is say, let's make a list of candidate explanations. You don't get to include magic or the supernatural as a candidate explanation at all until you have good reason to establish that it can interact with reality, and it can interact with reality in a way that makes it a candidate explanation. And so it might be the case that I'm happy to believe that somebody who was beheaded is now alive because all of the evidence points to that. But it does not in any way confirm that it was done because of their prayer, somebody else's prayer, a god, an alien technology that secured their head back, pixies, head restoring fairies or leprechauns. None of those things even get to be candidate explanations yet. We haven't excluded them, but they have to be ruled in. And so if somebody in claiming to be able to do something seemingly miraculous on behalf of their religion, if it's confirmed that in fact they are doing something that seems miraculous, that doesn't make it a miracle because we can be wrong. It also doesn't mean that their explanation for how it happened is right. That needs its own supporting evidence.
Okay, thanks, Matt. What's the magician trick called where they do the head slicing off thing that would be like that?
There's a bunch of them. I don't know what one it's called, nor does it matter.
Okay.
I've been told when it comes to magic tricks, I think Penn Jillette had said this, that the way all of their tricks are done, you can find in any magician's book, but the thing that keeps them safe is the books are boring, and no one wants to spend the time reading boring books to ruin the illusion. So that's how their tricks stay safe.
All right. And what was the other host's name? I can't see it right now.
That's Matt. Yeah, I mean, you were talking to Aaron, but
All right. Just want to say thanks to Aaron. That's you don't often hear clear refutations of claims. With the air thing in the sand. All right. Thanks, Matt.
yep. And just remember, keep investigating. And just because something seems amazing or miraculous doesn't mean it is. And even if it were, you still have all your work to do to show what's the cause of it. Because let's say you go out and you see a Buddhist monk swimming through earth in a way that seems to defy everything that you personally know and understand about physics. Let's say that happened to me. I can tell you what I would do, and that is to say, that's weird as fuck. We need to investigate this. I don't understand this. Is this a particular area where the dirt is different? Is it, more aerated? Is there something about this person? But even once we confirm that the phenomenon occurs, which we have not yet done, we still need to get to the why. This is why the James Randi Educational Foundation for years had $1 million prize for anyone who could even demonstrate the phenomenon that they claim to be able to do, not to demonstrate how they did it, not to show, but if I can remote view, I can read minds, I can levitate, I can douse for water. And in all of those years, nobody ever even passed the preliminary test to show that there was a there, that they could do the thing they said they were going to do. Instead, they keep coming up with excuses. And so I would be wondering, let's imagine that the monks can actually do miraculous things. Why the fuck are they hiding it and keeping it to themselves instead of letting the entire world know that they seem to be able to violate the laws of physics? This would be, I'm sure they want to keep it out of the hands of the military, because then you could just have, monk assassins who can just swim through the dirt to get to their enemies. But it's the same thing with the faith healers. Why is it that they need to have a revival and have tens of thousands of people show up and donate all kinds of money in order to heal somebody of something for which we have no evidence that they're actually doing? And why does it play the same, whether it's in a massive megachurch or a tent at a revival in the backwoods, and yet it never seems to work when we're in a hospital, when we're in any place to investigate it? The propensity, the claim of the trend of believable miracle claims has dropped just as our ability to investigate them has increased. They are almost directly inversely proportional. But thanks for the call. Keep questioning.
Thanks, Matt.
Maybe someday we'll get there. All right. Jay's calling from New York. Pronouns are he, him. Jay says maybe something is out there, but it's not scripture. Well, that's weird, Jay, because I believe scripture is out there. I've got some right here. I don't know what the something is. So welcome. You're on with Dr. Darren Adair and me.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, fellas? I was just calling in because I see that there's like from the energy I picked up, it was like you guys don't think there's nothing out there. Is that correct? Like you guys are not theists. You don't believe in creator, right?
Correct. I have no belief in anything supernatural. I have no belief in any God, and I have no belief in any sort of intelligent agent creator.
Okay. So my thing is, everything, like, you think everything that is, like all the universes, Earth, our system, and everything that is just happened on its own? You think that?
Happened on its own. Let's just go with, I'll just say, I don't know. Why should I believe what you believe?
I mean, I'm not saying that you should believe what I believe, because at the end of the day, I still don't really quite. I'm still not concrete, right? Because think about it, humanity, we always hit a wall. We just made discoveries about the Big Bang recently that kind of perplex scientists. They're coming up with explanations, but they still don't quite got a concrete explanation for what they found recently, through what they pictured through the James Webb Telescope. So we're constantly hitting walls, our understanding of black holes, and we're in a interstellar, intergalactic system that there are forces at play. And, there's elements, right? There's it's kind of like the building blocks of life. You got this element that combines with that, and then we get it's almost like a system. Like I don't know. It's magnificent, but it's not something I don't think can happen on its own. Think about human beings. We are.
I think about them all the time.
In comparison. Sorry?
I was just joking. I think about humans all the time.
No, yeah. So, what I was saying was, think about humans as a comparison to, like, I don't know, what's the biggest animal we got, like a tiger or something like that, a lion, right? It's the beast of the land, but it's no match to us because of our brains and our psyche. Our intelligence is different from that of any other creature that we are aware of. We can apply.
I do want to note that if it's me versus tiger, the tiger is going to say, "Yes, you got a big brain. All the more for me to eat." When it's just single tiger versus single human, it's a short battle, and I know the odds of me winning are somewhere between 0 and null. But
I hear you, but today you got a gun,
long
right?
term, if you're talking groups of people. Now, let's put it this way, though. You were noting that, humans in this grand universe are absurdly tiny. I mean, not only are we tiny compared to the Earth, but the Earth is tiny compared to the galaxy, and the galaxy is tiny compared to the observed universe. And the observable universe might itself be just one subset of something of infinite size. So, the biggest difference there could possibly be. Now, conversely, though, is this what you would expect on theism if you believe that there is a God that created the universe for humans, even though the vast majority of the universe is instantly lethal to life as we know it, and the vast majority of the universe is not even reachable by humans with any technology. That seems a bit odd if we're saying the universe is created for us, but the vast majority of it is completely inaccessible to us.
Well, that would beg me to the question. Then maybe it's a thing of, because everything is elements, no matter what it is, no matter what extent of space or bubble, galaxy, whatever it comes down to elements and different particles that exist on the periodic time table. That's what's out there. There's probably some we don't know about, but as far as we know, that's what everything is made up of: atoms, neutrons, all of that type of stuff. So my point is that that's not something that's a magnificent. Think about it. We're the smartest beings that we know of. No animal that we know of is smarter than us, and we can't do that. We cannot even comprehend the task that it would be to make DNA out of scratch. We could probably alter it. Could probably make a liger out of a tiger, but we can't just create an animal.
It's interesting you say that, because actually there's been about a decade of work in creating synthetic life. It was Craig Venter, I think, 10, 15 years ago, basically said, yep, we now got a printer that can print out DNA, put it into a cell, and the cell acts like a life form. So we actually have been able to do that to some extent. But more importantly, as you noted, we are, fundamentally everything is made up of, as the physicists would say, fundamental particles. But the weird thing is having things go from like the bottom up, that a whole bunch of things interacting to get to us, is actually the opposite of what you expect from a creator, where the entire system is decided and put in top down. We see a bottom up of things organizing, and haphazardly organizing in many cases, to eventually reach to us, which on occasion functions. And I have to say on occasion, because there are, I think it's like half of all fertilized eggs naturally abort. They fail for whatever reason. So actually you got massive failure just in humans developing other humans in the natural sort of, sex-based way. And then, of course, all the various other issues that humans might have during the developmental process. So, if anything, we're a bit lucky that we can have, enough things going right for us to have the conversations like we're having right now. It really looks like, hey, there are some background fundamental principles of how stuff interacts, and because it can do it complexly enough, it can develop into life, intelligent life, humans. And especially given gargantuan amounts of time. Again, kind of the opposite of what you'd expect if somebody is coming in, setting up the universe for life, but the vast majority of the time of the universe doesn't include life. The vast, vast majority of the universe can't even support the existence of life in that space. And the only time that there is actually any sort of grand intelligence is the minusculous fraction of life on one planet. This sounds like a whole bunch of trial and mostly error that the universe is performing to occasionally have humans that on occasion aren't throwing dung at each other and having conversations.
Yeah, if you imagine the timeline of the universe, if you imagine it beginning at your nose and hold your right arm out, and at the beginning of the nose is when the expansion of the universe, as far back as we can calculate it, back to the Planck time, that's when it begins. And you go all the way out to the very tip of your right finger. If you shaved off a tiny piece of your fingernail, that would be the entirety of human existence in this reality. And what's weird is, for most of that, nobody really had these notions. But for the tiniest fraction of that sliver, there are a handful of people there who are saying, wow, look at all this. It's so amazing. The entire universe must have been designed for my little sliver of it. So my thing is, Jay, when I look at the universe, there are things that we know and there are things that we don't know. We're gradually learning more and more about things, and all of the information that we've gained and been able to confirm is because of scientific inquiry. Religions have provided nothing in the way of a verifiable explanation for anything. Not only have they not, and anything that a religion claims would have to be verified by scientific methods before we could say, oh yeah, this religion had it right a long time ago. And instead what ends up happening is people find something in science, and then the religious go say, oh, see, my book says this here, except that their book never says that. It says something they can interpret. So my question is, if we just say We do not yet know how life originated on Earth. And now we need to say, what are the potential candidate explanations? We have to include that there's a natural process that led to this as a potential, because we know enough about the natural process. But if somebody comes along and says, no, the natural process isn't good enough, we need a supernatural explanation. My question for them is, number one, how did you confirm that the supernatural is even possible? How did you confirm that any sort of creator mind is even possible that goes beyond the natural world? And then once you determine that it's possible, you then have to show that it is capable of doing the thing you're trying to credit it with. None of that has been done. And therefore, it is absolutely irrational for anyone, unless they have evidence they haven't presented that we should get, to conclude that a God is even a possible explanation for reality, let alone the right one.
Well, you know, that's my whole thing. Like, we're gonna hit a wall because we're just humans. I've always said one thing: life is meant to be experienced, not explained. You know,
So I don't believe that either.
Yeah.
Say, why are you making a declaration about what life is meant to be? Because that language suggests that life has an intended purpose, and I see no intended purpose to life. That the notion that it's not meant to be understood or it's not meant to be explained, bullshit. I mean, that's just a sophistry that we tell ourselves so that we can pretend not to be uncomfortable with the fact that we don't know.
No, we don't
It's also
know.
against what our best philosophers
what I'm-
say. As Socrates allegedly said, the unexamined life is not worth living. So that position you would take, Jay, would be contrary to everything that humans have done that have advanced our understanding or approaches to understanding the world. And by the way, I would say by trying to understand the world, by trying to be introspective about our own nature and the nature of life and the scientific method, has done wonders in expanding our abilities to do these things. And not doing that would leave us no better than the cavemen that we kind of sort of used to be.
For sure. And I don't say don't explore. I'm saying that we don't know what happens beyond death. We don't know what created everything.
We agree, Jay.
Created everything. If it was a force. You understand?
No. Jay, we agree. I have no idea what happens after death, but all of the available evidence shows that everything that makes me ends at death. Every bit that has been attributed to a soul is either unverifiable or is an identifiable part of the brain. So I not only don't have any reason to think I will survive my death, I have really good evidence that I will not survive my death. But we don't know. And so I'm not the one that's claiming to know, but I will claim that my view on death is more consistent with all of the available information than any religion that pretends there's a magical part of me that will survive. And so we're not saying this is not true. We're saying this is not demonstrably true and no one should believe it until such time as it is. The time to believe there's a God or an afterlife is after it's been proven, not before.
This is what I'm saying, and it cannot be proven until you experience it. You see what I'm saying?
No, that's not true. That's not true either, Jay. Every time I Jay, stop. Every time I offer you a clarification, you just do that's what I'm saying, and then go on to say something else unjustified. You're saying the only way to know it is to experience. That's not true. It's possible for us to. I've never experienced a number of facts in the world that I have good reason to believe. So you're doing this. Oh, yes, we can't know, but the only way to know it is experience. That's not true either. Instead of saying what you think is the only way to experience stuff, just say I don't know and move on.
Well, that's true. Look, say for example, we all got an expiration date, right? So whenever mines come, right, it might just be nothing. It might just fade to black or whatever it does. I don't know. Like you said, I don't know. My point is that in this life that we're experiencing, because we are experiencing this, right? You agree you are experiencing your life right now, right? So
I feel like I'm experiencing my life. Yes.
Yeah. So my point is that for you to try to explain then what comes thereafter this current experience of life. You cannot do that. You don't even know if something comes or doesn't come, because as humans we have our
I don't know
limitations
why
and
you're
we will
restating.
eventually hit
Why
a
are you
wall.
restating? Why are you restating the thing that I've just fucking said?
Because it seems like you didn't like. It's like you disagree with me, and if we agree, then we agree. But it
No,
seemed like you
I've
disagree. That's
pointed
what I'm
out.
saying.
I've pointed out where I agree and where I disagree, and you're restating things. Did I say what comes after this life?
So you were saying for me not to say what, like basically what I was saying was like, I guess somehow wrong. Like me saying that life is meant to
Yes,
be
what you were
experienced,
saying,
not
what you
explained,
were
was wrong.
saying, what you were saying was unjustified. You made the claim that the only way to know is experience. How do you know that?
Because no one can know what comes out after death until you experience that. That's I'm
How do
talking
you
solely
know that?
about death.
How do you know that?
Well, from this experience right now, from where you stand right now, you can say what comes after life. I mean, can you?
No, I'm sorry that you don't understand the logical fallacy, but not being able to say, yes, I know, does not mean that you can say there's only one way to know, and it is through direct experience. That is fallacious.
Well, that is, I get, okay, I get your point. Maybe you can catch a vision or something like that. I don't know. Maybe
Oh,
a
maybe
light
there could be scientific evidence for it. Just as I
strengthen.
pointed out that there are many scientific claims that I have not experienced personally and yet are absolutely warranted by the available evidence.
Okay, so you're saying that maybe there's something out there that we haven't maybe discovered
No,
that could give us insight on what comes.
no, Jay. I'm not saying maybe there's something out there. I have no idea if there's something out there or not. I don't even know how to go explore whether or not there is. You're the one that is making a declaration that the
Amen.
only way to know is experience in it. And I'm saying that may be true. It may not be true. How do you know that the only way to know it is to experience it? And your answer was because that's the way it is. Well, that's not satisfying. It's
Huh.
fallacious. There may be other
So
ways
what
to
I,
know
yeah.
than for an individual to experience it directly, right?
I mean, if there's a way for an individual to know what comes after life while still experiencing life, I would be amazed to know that. I would be blown away by that, because to my
I'm sure
understanding,
you
there's
would.
never been a human being that experienced death that
I'm sure you would. I would
and
be too. But no matter how blown away you are, that doesn't give you a justification to say, this is the only way someone can know. What information do
well,
you have
to
that
to
allows
my
you to do?
current
No,
understanding.
no. What information do you have that allows you to declare this is the only way to know, rather than we don't know how to know? You're saying this is the only way to know.
Well, I mean, because we got our best scientists with our best technology, and everybody got the same question. Nobody knows what comes after. Like, no matter,
Okay. Does the
we know
fact
about
that
all these
nobody
forces.
currently knows, mean the only way to know is to experience it?
I mean, until I see something new, from my current
Okay.
understanding, because I have to
Now
take
you've
that
gone,
into account too,
Now
right?
you've gone from just spouting fallacies to spouting more fallacies, which is you're just saying, um, I'm going to hold this position until somebody proves me wrong. All I'm trying to do is make a point here that the fact that nobody knows doesn't mean that you know what is required to know. I don't think you have anywhere near the requisite knowledge, and I don't think
I hear what
anybody
you're
else
saying.
does.
I hear you.
I'm still talking, and I don't
Sorry.
think anyone else
Apologies.
does either. To say the only way to know this is through direct experience. And that's why I asked you 3 different times what justification you have for saying that the only way to know this is direct experience. And every single time you provided nothing other than that's the way it is. That's what my experience shows. And we've got our best scientists on it and they haven't cracked it yet. None of those, not any of those is a way to confirm that the only way to experience something is, or the only way to understand it is, or know about it is through experience. It's just a fallacy.
That's true. I hear you, and my bad. It took 3 times to get that hair strand of a difference, but I do see the difference. You're trying to basically tell me the issue is the declaration itself. Me saying that that's the way. Like
Yes.
there's other ways, maybe, possibly. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I shouldn't
Yep.
put a cap on it. I shouldn't put a lid on that based on my limited understanding. And I agree
Thank
with
you
that.
so much.
And noted,
Thanks. I agree. We're good.
There's an additional wrinkle of complexity we can add to this as well. If there is nothing after death, then there is no possible way to experience it because there's no you to experience the lack of you. So if experience is the only way and there's nothing after death, then it's also impossible to have that experience. So another thing that further complicates saying the only way to know is experience if experience is actually impossible.
No, that. I hear you. That I guess wording it that way is full of holes. Like as you both see and were able to point out. But what I'm saying is, I guess maybe I'm saying it wrong, but like, all right, using myself for an example, I'm probably not gonna know if there is something or not until it happens. It has to happen first, right? For me to know, because I'm not talking about me, myself. I'm not talking about you or if it's possible or not, whatever. I'm saying my possibilities, my limitation. Me just speaking from my limited mind. I don't have the information available to me to know. You understand what I'm saying? So I have to wait until it occurs for me to know if there is or isn't something after. Not if it's possible, or is not, whatever. I'm going to have my opinions on that, the way we all do, but we won't know for sure.
I think you've just absolutely restated in a different way the same thing you just agreed was wrong. You're saying the only way for you to know is to experience it. How do you know that's true?
For me, yeah. I mean, true. You're right. Again, you see what I'm saying? Like, all right, is there an afterlife or not?
I don't know.
Is there an afterlife or not? You don't know exactly. I don't know. So how would we find that out?
I don't know.
I don't know neither. You see what I'm saying? So now that we left with just questions and no answers, then it's fair to say we don't know, right? So it could be possible that there's an afterlife, right? And it could be possible there's no afterlife, right?
When you say possible, are we talking 50-50 possible or 1 in a gajillion? Because when we're talking about possible, we probably want to distinguish between possible as in we could go either way and possible as in I can't logically disprove it, but it's so incredibly tiny, it's worth forgetting about.
I mean, that's a tough one right there because life, life isn't just life. We have something in us that leads us upon death. Something happens to us. Something exits us. I don't know what it is. I don't know what we are even. Like humanity.
We don't have any evidence of that. In fact, quite the opposite. Because the thing that we can tell of what life is fundamentally a bunch of electrochemical processes happening at the cellular level. And a dead cell and a living cell don't change their mass, for example, upon just dying. That basically the processes that are running in those cells stop for various reasons. But if you've heard that a dead body loses 23 grams or things like that, that is debunked pseudoscience as an example. There's, as far as we can tell, there is no vital force that gives life motion or things like that. That's basically been outside of the mainstream of science since at least the 19th century.
So then why do human beings turn room temperature then? What is it that keeps us warm? Like, why do we have something that keeps our blood hot? Like, we're not room temperature. We don't even get cold when we die. We just turn room temperature, and that feels cold to us because our blood is hot.
Oh, well, if you're dead, you're not feeling anything. But nonetheless, the key thing is this. The reason you are warm is that you have a whole bunch of chemical reactions going on in your body of breaking down sugars and things like that to produce ATP, to do all the various processes inside of all of your molecular machines going on. When you're dead, those processes are no longer happening. And basically in the same sort of way, when a fire goes out, why does it return to the same temperature of the background? Because the chemical reaction is no longer happening. and everything returns or moves to the average temperature around them. So there's not really anything mysterious on that front when it comes to why dead bodies turn to ambient temperature.
Well, in that same analogy with the fire going out, right? Like something was sparking that, like the fire. It was an
He just
intentional
told you,
spark. So
Jay.
whoever sparked,
Jay, he just explained to you. There are electrochemical reactions going on in your body all the time. Your body is a biological machine that is converting the food that you bring in into energy to keep your body alive. When that machine stops working, just like anything else, it will stop being warmer and move to the ambient temperature of its surroundings. And then it'll actually heat up as well as the bugs come in to start eating your body, and so that they can continue to live. And then eventually you'll decay to the point where there's nothing of you for anyone to find, and you'll be at the temperature, or your pieces will be at the temperature of your surroundings. When a body stops working, the machine that keeps it warm stops.
I hear that. I'm saying that to even get it to work that way, that's kind of complex. The brain is
it's
crazy
complex,
thing.
but that's
Wouldn't you
why
agree?
life has about 4-ish billion years of developmental history. That humans did not pop out of the dirt, as some stories might suggest. We have a long evolutionary history of starting from chemicals that are able to reproduce themselves with some level of specificity, to unicellular organisms, to then multicellular, to the grand diversity of plants, animal, fungi, and all the things that we see from day to day. But that took literally billions of years of evolution to get to what we are.
I mean, I hear you, but the Earth isn't the Earth quote unquote 4.5 million years old? Isn't that? Or you saying?
Yeah, the Earth is about
Other liquids from out
4.5
there.
billion. And just to be clear, 4.5 billion with a B years old is the approximate age of the
Billion.
Earth.
Okay, billion. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, my thing is, I just don't see how all these things just happen. Every ball I ever
These
seen in
things-
motion, something put it in
just
motion.
happen.
You understand what I'm saying?
Hey,
Any process.
Jay,
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
you do realize that there are websites and resources where you don't even have to go to university, who will walk you through the process of evolution by means of natural selection, show common ancestry, do a pretty good catalog of the diversity of life and everything else. The fact that you don't understand it, do you think that has more to do with the fact that you haven't been taught and didn't study it, or because it's not really likely? Because the bulk of scientists consider the biological explanation of evolution by means of natural selection, which explains the diversity of life on the planet, to be one of the most robust and well-documented scientific models in the history of the world. And you're just sitting here saying it doesn't make sense to you. And I get it. A lot of us weren't taught this stuff remotely correctly and weren't given the insight into even how to look up. But if you just keep going with, it doesn't make sense to me, that's fine. And it never has to make sense to you. But if you don't bother to try to correct that, and you reach a conclusion based on what doesn't make sense to you, you have to acknowledge that your conclusion isn't likely to be correct, because it's not based on anything substantive. It's based on, I don't know, therefore God.
No, I mean, I don't know, therefore I don't know. So therefore, but I do know we're here. That's what I'm saying. You get what I mean? Like, that's what's...
If you called in to say we're here, Jay, we already knew that.
No, I know that, but what I'm saying is that has to mean something. That can't just...
No, it doesn't. No, it
doesn't,
Jay. No, it absolutely doesn't have to mean a fucking thing that we're here. It's just a fact that we're here. You don't get to say we're here for a reason or a purpose. You don't get to say that this is significant. We are just here. Just like there's a rock in my front yard, a tree in my backyard, There's a fence post. It's all here. Some of it we arranged for, some of it occurred naturally, but none of it has to mean anything in the sense that you seem to be implying.
Okay, so what is your opinion on consciousness? Consciousness. Like, what is your
I wish
opinion
I
on
wasn't
that?
experiencing it at this particular moment.
Good one. But do you think there's like a soul or something like that, or spirit
Jay,
within us?
did you not listen to me earlier when I said all the scientific evidence suggests that the soul is one of the single most dead concept in all of theology, and every identifiable, verifiable part of what's been attributed to a soul that is actually real is a functional, identifiable part of the brain? No, I don't see any reason to believe there's a soul. As a matter of fact, I see incredibly strong reason to believe there is, in fact, no such thing as a soul, not the least of which is my entire personality, likes, desires, preferences, and everything can be changed by physically altering my brain. That makes no sense if there's a soul in there. Did the soul just get disconnected from the brain and now it's collecting my sin and having to deal with my sin when it doesn't steer the ship anymore? Or did the soul get damaged as well? Can you actually stick a needle in my brain and turn me from an atheist into a Christian? And does that save me? Nothing about a soul makes any sense and is not supported by evidence. The time to believe a soul exists is when it's been shown to exist, and it hasn't.
Yeah. So like one of the things that always perplex me about us human beings is sleep. You know, the fact that we have to sleep. Our brain sleeps, but we don't always remember what we dream of. We don't stay conscious to it. It's like we go through this process where we're out, you know, and we wake up, and it's like we don't understand ourselves. You know, I've had surgery many times. I've taken that gas they put you in, breathe a couple times, wake up. It feels like a second, and it's 8 hours later, 6 hours later. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, because I've had a triple bypass.
I hear you. I don't want to complicate it. I'm just so I don't know. I just have questions. You understand what I'm saying? And
then keep asking them and looking for answers. Go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
Jay, in particular, when it comes to sleep, it's actually been one of those mysteries in science that actually there's been breakthroughs in that in just like the last 10, 20 years of understanding why do people, or even in general, why do animals, most animals, go through this cycle of sleep? Because you'd think, hey, that seems pretty disadvantageous if for several hours you're just laying there and possible food for tigers. And it seems like it's ultimately a function of the needs of the brain to effectively clear out chemicals that build up throughout the day as the brain is processing things. And this is a chance for the system to kind of flush itself clean. So I don't know the details very well because I'm no biologist, but my understanding is that there's actually been incredible research and progress in answering the question of why we sleep that is actually progressing and helping answer that question. So Jay, you clearly have a lot of questions, and it's awesome to have questions. And I'm here to let you know that there's a lot of things we actually do know the answers for, or we know how to make progress there. And I would say there's plenty for you to research without having to spend tens of thousands of dollars talking to professors at universities. You can get your foot in the door in terms of the information superhighway in finding out all the amazing stuff we know, so you can then say, all right, now I understand this better. Now what other new questions can I develop?
Sure. Like what you just said to me right there just created a new question in my mind in real time. It's crazy because you said that the brain releases chemicals, and you know that's what happens. Kind of like when we sleep, we learn new things, and that's what's kind of going on. Like, yeah, we're sleeping, we probably don't remember it, but that's what happened, right? I'm wondering is that similar to what happens when a person passes? You know, because at that point the brain is not doing anything. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's why I say I don't understand consciousness, because in both situations you're out, you know, but just in one situation you don't come back. You understand what I'm saying? Like, is there a difference in those conscious states?
So when people die,
I don't know.
When people die, they die in a lot of different ways, and the process isn't always the same. But We have no reason to think that people are experiencing death in much the same way, like when you've had surgery and you're like, oh, I was out for hours, but it felt like just a minute. It's because you, in some ways, stopped experiencing. Death is like that, only, as far as we can tell, only more permanent and more thorough, in that it won't feel like a second. It won't feel like anything because you don't come back and you don't experience it. It's just done. And so, like you blew out the candle, and a candle that didn't leave much but a lingering trail of smoke for people to remember it for just a second. The answer is on consciousness and all these other things, we don't know, but we're going to keep looking and exploring. And we're not going to accept the claims of the supernaturalists and the religious pretending that they have sorted it out when there's no good reason to think anybody has sorted it out yet. And I get it, Jay. You're asking great questions. You are struggling with the same big issues that some of the best philosophers and scientists have struggled with throughout human history. And the key thing that from my perspective, only because you called, because I'm not really looking to just give advice. The key advice that I give you is keep asking questions, but actually start taking notes if you're not doing it already. And then say, here's the question that's really struggling. I'm really struggling with the most. Let me go out and do a Google search and follow that just on one issue. And let me follow that rabbit trail for a week, a month, however long it is before I get to the point where I can say, either it seems that nobody really knows this and we're still working towards an answer, or maybe we can't ever know. We don't know. Or I just wasn't informed about this. And there's all these other cool things. And while it doesn't completely answer the question, it spirals up other stuff in my brain so that I have more questions to go explore. Follow that passion to learn as much as you can about the world and to assume as little as necessary.
I agree with that. Sure. That's why I made the museum thing, so I could go with my little boy to the museum. We go to the planetarium often. I try to look at these things, but it's a lot to take in, man. It's a whole lot to take in. And
when you say the planetarium, are you talking the Hayden Planetarium in New York City?
Yeah, that one over there.
Oh yeah, that one is awesome. And the entire, that and the attached American Museum of Natural History. Yeah, I could spend months just looking at the exhibits there, let alone finding out what's in the shelves that they don't show the public. There is at least 10 times as much data behind the curtain than what they put on display. So there's a lot to learn. And then you find out, once you've learned that much, you just discover, now there's 100 times more things to learn.
Exactly. It's kind of like coding. It's kind of, that's why I say it's like, I don't know why rocks exist, right? So why don't rocks have the option to reproduce? Why don't rocks have brains? Why it's just so complicated, man.
So you should probably, I would recommend starting with looking into the differences between organic and inorganic materials and how things reproduce. And because, rocks don't reproduce. They are in fact inert. I got to move on, Jay, because we got other callers waiting, but keep asking questions, hit the museums, hit the books, hit the websites, watch some videos, and just keep getting better at learning to get better.
This was great, and I know you guys don't believe in any theism or none of that, but I'm going to tell you right now, this was a blessing for me. All right? Well, you guys gave me a lot of information to go and look on. You understand what I'm saying? I feel fulfilled by that. Thank you. You guys have a blessed day, right? Have a wonderful day.
I have no reason to have a blessed day, but I am going to keep looking for better answers, and I'm glad that you might be as well. So thanks so much. Oh, it is one of those things where and this is not a slight on Jay. We know that we have failed huge swaths of people in the education system. And it's not just about, there have been a number of mistakes, and I'm not an expert on what the best pedagogy is or anything else, but we can teach people facts. But the only value in that is you have information, and then you have to trust that the information you were given was correct. The other method is to teach people how to evaluate claims of facts. And now you've given them tools, kind of the difference between, giving someone a fish and teaching them a fish kind of thing. And we've got to do both. But it seems like one of the things that we've failed, and we failed long before I was even in school. I was bored in school, had no motivation, no interest. Everything either came easy or was wholly uninteresting with no apparent value and nobody to say, oh, here's why this could be worth knowing in the future. And yet I'm an absolutely obsessive learner, so much so that it causes problems on occasion. I'm not normal. And yet what I see from people like Jay are people who are absolutely curious, who, for whatever reason, somewhere, everybody else, now they could have failed themselves a little bit too, I'm not trying, but the system has definitely failed if we take people who are genuinely curious and don't foster that sense of discovery. I don't remotely know how to fix it.
By the way, I was having a little bit of fun with the calculator, and I was double checking the estimate you said about human life on the scale of from nose to arm. Very quickly ran the numbers, and if you take the entire history of the universe from nose to tip, then all of human history, as in human as a species, about 250,000 years of existence, that would be about the size of a relatively small mote of dust. If you go from arm to arm and do just the history of the Earth, then yeah, a scraping of your fingernail would be about the entirety of human existence. So I had too much free time writing my calculator in the background.
I went with an example that I think I'm going to forget who did it. It might have been Dawkins. It might have been Sean Carroll. Somebody gave that as an example from nose to the fingertip. And maybe they said mote of dust and I changed it to shaving. But yeah, I guess it depends on how much you clip your nails. Yeah. And how long,
Yes.
But yeah.
I remember Dawkins doing that with like a group of children to explain the massive history of Earth. And I think he just said like arms extended and the history of the Earth. And then said doing a shaving of your fingernail is about the entire history of the human species. So yeah, yes. Fortunately, it's all like the same order of magnitude. It's all still immensely tiny, which tells you if the universe is meant for that mote of dust of time, most of the universe is kind of a waste.
When we talk about things, when we talk about the scale of things, we talk about time scales and everything else. When we talk about distances, astronomical units are difficult for anybody to fathom. To say it's 13.8 billion years or whatever, or 14 point, I don't, the number's around 14 billion years for the age of the universe. And a lot of that has to do with it. You were like say, okay, we're gonna measure the cosmic microwave background radiation. I used to have a T-shirt that had the graph from the actual measurement of the CMBR that matched the predictions, and underneath it just said science. It works, bitches. And it was great because here's a prediction, and I love it because it's an example of a prediction about an event that occurred in the past and what we would see from it now, given our availability. And so when we measured it and it came out to line up with the predictions, that shows the strength of the model, that the model can make predictions. Similarly, when we look at something like biological evolution and missing links, Tiktaalik is probably my favorite example because in the layman's nutshell, essentially what happened is some scientists said, hey, if we're right about the evolution of these different species, we should find something that looks a little bit like this in this layer of rock, in this region of the Earth, because we know about the type of climate this thing would have needed and where that was located at that time. So it's not just enough to go back, 120 million years or whatever. I don't remember how long it was for Tiktaalik, but it's not just enough to go back in time. You have to consider what the climate was like in various places at that time and find the location where the ecosystem would have fostered that specific life, even if it's a fucking desert now. And so they took multiple disciplines of science, merged them together with all these models, and they went out and dug and found the exact thing they were looking for. I mean, man, when any religion does anything at all like that, I'll quit the fucking shows. Actually, no, I won't quit the shows. I'll convert the shows to be talking about how magnificent it is that religion has finally, in the entire course of humanity, trumped science. Oh, I hate saying Trump anymore. I can't even play card games the way I want. All right. This one is one that I have answered about 53,000 times. So I'm gonna let Aaron start, but Elias is calling from New York. Elias is a theist who wants to know why you don't believe in God. So welcome to the show, Elias. How are you?
No wonder that I gotta die.
What's that? You do realize I have your phone number. You do realize I have your phone number and you've called us before? Are you just calling to prank?
Yeah, he started shouting some stuff and there was some giggling in there. I muted his audio. I think we should probably just drop him.
Cool. Well, now I got your phone number, Elias. We'll just ban your phone number and you won't ever be able to call from that one. You'll have to go get yourself a burner phone if you want to show everybody how not lame you are. Apologies for those who would consider that to be an ableist thing. I never really considered it that way because I grew up on a farm and just a fact, a horse comes up lame or whatever else, but not trying to be an ableist insulter to anybody other than perhaps the caller. How long do you wait on hold to do that?
People are devoted to just the best and worst things.
All right, here we go. Riley's called from Canada. Riley's happy with any or all pronouns and has questions about Cus I Wanna's 5 ways. So, hey, Riley, you're on the air with Dr. Aaron Adair and me. If you're calling from your phone on your web browser, like I said, oh, Riley hung up.
Huh.
After being on hold for an hour for a call that, let's be honest, I told Arden we could drop. And I want to explain why. I guess that's a good reason to explain why. I genuinely want people to call in and say, here's what I believe, why I believe it, why I think you guys should believe it. Please help me figure out where I'm wrong. Why don't you guys agree? And that's one of the reasons why I was happy to take a call about why don't you guys believe in God? Because first of all, which God are we talking about? And I don't believe in any gods for the same reason I don't believe in any other things that have been claimed but not supported by sufficient evidence. But the Thomas Aquinas 5 ways, those are classical arguments for the existence of God, and each of them are huge topics potentially in and of themselves. And I've done videos on my personal channel on most or all of them, and we've answered most or all of them at different times. The reason I don't want to take a call from someone who's like, hey, what do you think? What's your response to all the 5 ways? Is despite what people think, I don't love to just sit here and listen to myself talk. And I give plenty of lectures unprompted. This isn't a show to call in and quiz the hosts about what is your answer to these 5 famous arguments for the existence of God. I mean, we can do them in short form and we can go through them individually with individual callers, but it's not an interview and I'm not here to be quizzed. And at the end of the day, even if myself or my co-host or nobody on the show had ever heard any of those arguments or had put any thought to them all, to any of them, it wouldn't make any difference. The claim that a God exists needs its own defense. If you're like, oh, I can't believe you guys don't accept this particular argument, Okay, maybe somebody never heard it, or I don't believe you guys don't accept this particular piece of evidence. Maybe somebody never saw that evidence. That's completely irrelevant. It's like when callers call up and say, okay, I have an argument for the existence of God, but let me ask you this. No, there's nothing you need to ask me. There's literally nothing about me or my positions or my life or anything else that has any relevance to whether or not you have a valid and sound argument for the existence of God. Because if it did, that would mean your argument wasn't valid and sound before I was born. That's not the way arguments work. Now, there may be an argument that's specifically about me, which may not have been sound before I was born because I didn't exist as a person to do this. Unless you believe the Bible, in which case I did exist, or at least God knew me, I guess. I don't know. All right. We got a couple of atheist callers online. Jason's been on hold for like an hour and a half. Jason, pronounce him from Florida. What's up? How you doing?
Hi, are you guys able to hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I am discussing a range of topics with a theist friend of mine. We've discussed tag and we've discussed some other societal issues, but today we were texting back and forth about claims, propositions, and the potentiality of them being true. And my initial response to that is that I don't accept the potentiality. This came out of a discussion about a pastor on the internet gone viral for making some comments about Black culture. He said some very disparaging things. If a Black person comes to your church, they're welcome, but they can't bring their culture because Black culture is this. And I said, do you think that that's what Black culture is? And they said, well, it could be. And I said, it could be? I don't explain that to me. Do you have any evidence that it could be? His answer was, no, I don't have any evidence, but it could be. And my response was, I don't know how it could be if there's no evidence. And he said, well, the potential that it could be is why I think it could be. It could potentially, all claims can be potentially true or false. And so I wanted some kind of feedback about if I'm approaching that correctly.
Okay. I have some kind of particular persnickety thoughts on this coming from a philosophical background.
Okay.
Every single claim is in fact either true or not true.
Yeah, we agreed on that, myself and the theist. We agreed on that.
Cool. If somebody claims that it is possibly true, they need to demonstrate that it is in fact possible for that to be true. There's two different categories of possibility. One of them is in the, everything's possible until it's been shown to be possible. Basically, it's possible in theory or in principle, or we don't know anything that would necessarily render it impossible. That version of possibility is useless when talking about claims in the real world, because there are analytic claims and there are synthetic claims. And analytic claims are something like, Steve is a married bachelor. That is not possibly true by virtue of the fact that there's a contradiction in there. Then they claim Steve is a bachelor who got married. That is possibly true, but not necessarily true, given what we know about those definitions, assuming we're talking about just in principle. But if in fact, Steve is a pet rock in reality, then a pet rock didn't just get married and wasn't a bachelor before, because it's already a category error. So if your friend wants to say X is possible, they either need to demonstrate it or acknowledge that they're talking about a sort of analytic possibility that for all we know, there's a difference between for all we know it's possible and nobody's proved it's false. And plus, at the end of the day,
go ahead.
Plus, at the end of the day, even if it were possible, like empirically possible, for example, here's a 20-sided die. We know through demonstration and observation that within the framework of all things, it is possible for me to roll that die and for it to come up with that 7. It may be that the die is weighted where that's less likely, or maybe there's something about this, but on a fair die roll, and as a matter of fact, I did just roll a 7, it's a coincidence. If somebody took this die and said, is it possible that you just rolled an 8? I would have to say, yes, it's possible. That doesn't mean it did or didn't happen. And so if they say, I have good reason to believe that because it's possible that you rolled an 8, that you in fact did roll an 8, they are mistaken. That requires additional evidence to show that that is the probable or likely outcome. And that's why since they can't do anything, evidently, to demonstrate that their God is probable or likely, they're just going to try and say, well, you haven't proved it's impossible, therefore I'm on equal footing. No, you're fucking not on equal footing with regard to reason.
Okay. Man, that I've been delving into, and I really quick, I just want to say, my deconversion years ago was in a large part to the call-in shows that you do and the work that you guys did, the AP experience, et cetera, over the years. So I do want to just throw that in before I forget. Thank you guys all very much. I'm trying to learn about philosophy now and learn more about it so I can speak to these topics better. And so I guess my question would be on a claim. So his argument was, when we're looking at a claim, but we don't, like, it's an unknown claim. It's an unknown claim that exists out into the multiverse, the universe of claims. That claim is always potentially true or false. That was his bottom line. And my response was, there are claims that can't possibly be true. So not all claims are potentially true or false. And there are claims that are automatically false. And so all claims can't be potentially true or false. And that is where we kind of hit our boundary. What would be the way of explaining? Because I have not, I was looking at self-contradictory claims as my next step to go into explaining why it can't possibly be true that all claims are possibly true or false.
Well,
so would you say that would be the next step? That would be where you go to?
Yeah, that's what I was just doing. Essentially, you could try and do it with something like a liar's paradox or something like that to show that there's a statement that is not possibly true. But all you really got to do is understand that we're talking about analytic statements. If in fact there is a logical contradiction, that is considered philosophically a demonstration of impossibility, because the ground level is often described as identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, however you want to do it, Venn diagram.
Yep.
In fact, there's not a three-sided square. It is impossible for there to be a three-sided square. And that has nothing, by the way, it's impossible for there to be a square. Squares are not something that can exist, just like lines can't exist, because lines have zero width. They're just abstractions. They are labels that we put on things. And because of that, there are statements that cannot be true analytically. But there are other statements that might be made that evidently cannot be true synthetically. Like, Matt can flap his wings and fly. That may be, given all of the things about reality that we understand, it would seem to be impossible. And the rational assumption is to not necessarily believe that it's impossible or to believe that it's possible, but to reject both of those until possibility or impossibility has been established. But if you want to view it as a sort of spectrum between possible and impossible, given the information we know, it is almost certainly the case that me being able to flap my arms and levitate and fly is way closer to the impossible side of that spectrum than it is to the possible. But the possibility is still binary. I just, for the people who want to go down the spectrum,
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because one of he gave the example of, if I make the claim that cats can fly in a vacuum, like in a vacuum being like, I don't know anything else about the claim,
It's an
that
equivocation
claim
fallacy.
can possibly be true or it can possibly be false.
It's an equivocation fallacy because in a vacuum, first of all, is a fundamental change from what we normatively mean when we're talking about flying.
Right.
But
Yeah.
also a cat would
Yep.
die in a vacuum and would not be flying.
Well, he was meaning in a vacuum as in like we don't know anything else about the scenario. But it would still like
unless he's talking about a vacuum cleaner, that cat's dead.
Yeah.
yeah. He's talking
Let's
about
put it
in a
this way.
vacuum like here's the statement, you don't know anything else about it. But I think the issue is that all the assumption about cats come in, all the information about cats come in.
Yes.
A cat is a land animal that can climb trees, but there are cats that fly. They don't have wings or anything like that. My response was, I don't know, but there's no evidence of cats flying. So that's where I would stop. I don't know, but there's no evidence of cats flying, so I can't possibly say that it's true. And his response is, well, it's possibly true. And so I think learning about those two types of claims is I'm gonna have to listen to this call back and think a little bit more on this. But I agree. It's kind of what I was trying to present to him. And again, like if you come from the basis of it seems like his logical foundation is if like believing things are true makes them true. And then like tag type arguments where like all of my beliefs come from these transcendentals that are only existent in God. And so all the things that I think are true because God. So all these things can be true. And it's been an interesting conversation with this person, but thank you very much. That helps me out a lot because I felt like I was not understanding what he was saying to the point of him being correct, but I'm starting to realize that he is just looking at the possibility of a claim without like any accounting for all the different types of claims there are, including claims that can't possibly be true. There have to be claims that aren't true. There have to be claims that are true. Those claims don't have a possibility of being not true or false. Not true or true. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Jason,
that's why
if I can also recommend one other thing as a funny anecdote to this, because when it comes to what's possible, when people say possible, their first thought might be that, oh, it's 50-50. It could be the case or not the case, and so it's just as likely one or the other. And this reminds me of an incident from 2008. And it stands out to me because this was when I was going into grad school for physics. The Large Hadron Collider was being ready to be turned on. And there was, I think it was a teacher in Hawaii who was trying to sue to prevent the machine being turned on because they thought it could possibly produce a black hole and destroy the Earth. And there was a whole bunch of headlines about this. And only one news organization actually went to that person to ask them why they thought it was possible. And that news organization was The Daily Show. And the correspondent was John Oliver talking to this person. And he talks to a physicist and he says, the chances is 0. And it's, basically 0 that the Large Hadron Collider could have produced a black hole and that black hole could have destroyed the Earth. It's effectively 0 probability. And this person was claiming, oh, it's 50-50. And John Oliver eventually stopped and said, okay, you keep saying 50-50 chance. How do you get that? And his response was, well, it either could happen or it couldn't happen, therefore 50-50.
Right.
And so he wanted to stop all of science.
Yeah. I had this exact same exchange with a long time ago at the we'd have skeptics in the pub night, and there was a guy who showed up, came down, wanted to have a drink and argue with me. And I kid you not, he was working on his PhD in philosophy. And if he ever got it, I think it should be fucking revoked. But he was trying to argue seriously that because you will either win the lottery or you will not, that therefore you have a 50-50 chance of winning the lottery. And I was like, the only way you have a 50-50 chance of winning the lottery is if you're playing a lottery where the odds of winning are 50-50. But if you're talking about the pick a number lottery like the Powerball, no, you do not have a 50-50 shot at winning the lottery. Just because something will either happen or doesn't or won't happen, that is a tautology. Something either will or will not. The likelihood that it will or will not is a completely separate thing. And to pretend that your odds of calling a coin toss correctly are the same as winning the lottery is beyond stupid, and they should not award you with a master's or a doctorate in philosophy.
At the very least, his philosophy degree better not be in the philosophy of mathematics, because the most basic thing is the sum of all probabilities has to be to 100%. And if every single value that you could get for the lottery is 50-50, well, with the millions of options, you add up those probabilities and realize, oh yeah, that's way more than 100%. You done fucked up. So yeah, he better not have gotten his degree in the philosophy of mathematics, because that's an auto fail.
It's one of those things where, you get interested in a certain area, you study a certain area, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh shit, I don't know anything at all about statistics, but what I'm doing requires some basic understanding of statistics. One of the reasons, the number one book that I recommend every time, all of you in chat can say it with me, no matter what the subject is, it's the best book I think ever written to actually educate people and build up an ability to look into every other issue. The book is called Enumeracy by John Allen Paulos, and it describes how bad we are at math, how easy it is to manipulate and misunderstand those things. And I kid you not, even as a reasonably well-informed individual who already was already numerate in a limited sense, that book changed my life. And every single person I've recommended it to who bothered to read it, he said, looking down the hall.
I told you I'm getting there. It's like next on my list.
Okay. I love you. It's like all of them are like, wow, yeah, it took things that I knew and understand that we were getting wrong and put it together in a nearly perfect package.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna get that book. That kind of is in line with what I was thinking. I just wanted to. I'm like a 10-year plus listener, first time caller. I was just sitting here thinking I really need to like ask this question to see where I'm at. I want to make a final comment that I think this is one of those linchpin like disagreements between theists and atheists that make the conversation like weird sometimes, because the person I'm talking to is a theist and believes that virtually anything is possibly true or false. It could be true or false regardless of what it is, unless it's like illogical, unless it's a self-contradictory. And
I would say,
I'm making the response that, well, I don't know, and I'm reserving judgment until evidence presented, because if the evidence is not there, I definitely can't say it's false or true. I can't say it's true at all if there's no evidence. And his stance is you can say that something is possibly true even if you have no evidence for it. And that kind of leads directly into all of these beliefs about the supernatural and the nature of the world and the existence of God, because you believe that just about anything can occur because you don't have a standard to stop yourself from believing anything before you've seen the evidence, which is, I hope theists like think about that, and I'm definitely going to watch this call back. But thank you guys very much.
Don't get bogged down in the weeds. Don't get bogged down in the weeds, because you can easily say, instead of continuing to argue about whether or not X is possible, let me just go ahead and grant, for the sake of argument, that it is possible that there is a God. What's your next step to show that in fact there is one, not just possibly one? Because I could possibly win the lottery if I bought a ticket, presumably. Now show that I actually won the lottery. That's the next step. And so you can concede quite a bit. I could even say it's possible there is a God. It is even seems likely there is a God, and a God would serve as a sufficient but not necessarily necessary explanation for a number of things we observe. Now, what's the next step? To show this sufficient explanation is also probable and or necessary. because all of this is a dodge. You don't talk about when scientists say, hey, we just created something from nothing, or we just confirmed life on Mars. However they want to phrase it, they're not just saying we confirmed that it's possible in a hypothetical universe that there might have been life on Mars. That's discussions about reality and facts aren't done like this. We don't. When you go to a symposium on the latest findings in cosmology, I don't think, and I would be very surprised if in any of the paper presentations or the questions, someone was like, yes, I understand what you're saying, but could you tell me if you've solved the problem of hard solipsism to prove that we are actually experiencing a shared reality? Because if we're not, then everything you've said about the proposed shared reality is pointless and moot. I don't think that's how science gets done. And yet, curiously, that's the fallback for religion, which is why I called out a bunch of Christian apologist debate bros who have formed a little network where they go out and argue with people to show that that Christianity is better than Islam, because they have utterly failed. Christianity is true or good, and it's much easier to pick the low-hanging fruit of, oh, those people already believe in some bullshit. Let's just show them our bullshit's better.
Right. Yeah, his fallback would be tag, as I said earlier, but we had already discussed tag a little bit, and tag is so ridiculous. Like, I don't even I feel like I'm not great at arguing against it, but I also feel like I shouldn't have to be, because it's just assertions, and I don't know. I'd say that. I'm like, you're just saying that X is true. You're just saying that that's true. Like, I don't know where to go with this. So, yeah.
We can do that another time, Jason. I got to move on, and your audio is dropping just a little bit. So thanks a ton for the call and for your patience waiting. I've got to get going. And on that note, I'm still waiting. There's a call in the queue that I'm waiting for. I'm surprised it hasn't been screened yet, but we've got another caller waiting. So we'll start with Jonah is calling from New York. As a reminder, before we take Jonah, there are lines open. If you're a theist or a believer in the supernatural, or if you have questions about science stuff or philosophy stuff that we can maybe help with, explaining some stuff or having discussions, you will go right to the top of the queue if you're a theist or in those lines. And all these atheists can sit on hold for months if need to be. But since we're out of theists at the moment, Jonah's calling from New York with a question about prejudice. Prejudice.
Hey, I grew up in a very extreme situation with religion, and it's caused me to have a very strong prejudice versus Christians and priests and pastors. And it's something I don't think is very logical. And I try to live a life where I'm not doing that. You know, I'm very much against racism and, you know, the normal stuff like that. But I find myself, even especially with the news, different things happening, I find I have a lot of anger towards them. And a lot of it's how I was raised, which was a very difficult situation. But I'm having a hard time getting by it, and I'd rather wonder like what you think about stuff like this.
I don't have prejudice against Christians. I have a bias against Christianity. If I run across somebody and they're a Christian, I don't assume that they're an idiot or evil or immoral or a problem. Although I absolutely despise their religion and what the organizations do on behalf of it. So I try to separate the individual from the positions that I'm objecting to. I don't know if that fits.
It's a hard proposition because, not getting too much into my backstory, I don't think, but my father was a minister. But he was a very abusive person. So much to the fact where I still have to find him and get him removed from churches. So much that they made a true crime podcast about him. And it kind of stayed in my mind in a sense, where whenever I talk to a minister or a preacher or even a Christian, I hate it, but back in my mind, I hate them. And that's not a good way to be. And it's something I even have some family who are Christians who I don't talk to, and there's nobody in my life who's a Christian. Other than maybe some people at work, but we don't talk about that stuff at work, So, and I'm having a hard time getting past this. I don't know if there is, some sort of an idea or something that can really help me to work past that, so I'm not as hateful. It just doesn't feel nice.
Well, I'm going to let Aaron jump in with any thoughts that he has, but I would definitely suggest first thing going to seculartherapy.org.
Okay.
I was thinking a similar thing if things like recovering from religion would be helpful with that, because ultimately, Jonah, what you're describing sounds like something that someone with therapy training is the person who would help you with this far more than a couple guys on a podcast. We definitely want what's best for you. And believe me, my heart goes out to you. I want the best for you, and I don't want you to, have, as you're saying, this prejudice against people in this sort of way, because it's probably not good for you or the relationships you would like to have. But I'm also definitely not the kind of person that can help with any sort of training, because if you don't know how to provide therapy to a person, you could probably really mess with them. And I do not even want to. In the same way, I don't want to do open heart surgery on a person. I don't want to mess with someone's mind in the way that a therapist potentially could if they don't know what they're doing. So very strongly recommend that you have those with the professional experience to talk things through ultimately. And so, yeah, the
I do.
like recovering from religion, secular help like that is the most immediate things I'm aware of that we have access to.
And I do have resources like that, and I do use them. It came up more recently. I'm not going to plug it, but there's a true crime podcast that just did a deep dive on them and things of this sort, and it brought things up again, And so listen to his voice, and I'm just wondering, how common is this in witches community? Is it really my bias that so much child abuse has happened in churches, or is it actually a problem? I don't actually know. Other than the big case, it was a Catholic church, and stuff like that. But I'm not referring to those.
Well,
and so
child abuse is a problem. Full stop. It needs to be. We need to be proactive in preventing that. And if there are institutions that insulate child abusers, we need to change those institutions or put things in place that actually overlook those institutions to prevent this, whether it's the Catholic Church, the Jehovah's Witnesses, or other secular organizations that might also potentially cause harm to innocent people. That needs to be stopped. If there's a preschool that's abusing children, we shut that down.
Of course.
I feel the same way about other organizations like that. But in your personal case, it's ultimately, it sounds like, a father figure who is doing things that are just absolutely abusive. And the best I can say is you probably want to find ways of separating what this person did to you and what people in general do. And I am not here to defend Christianity, but I'm going to say probably the vast majority of Christians don't act that way. And it's good to see that there is good in people.
I agree. I think most Christians actually, they're wrong. I believe they're wrong at least, but they're good people. But I just hate having that bias. I hate racism and I'm against prejudice, but I notice that prejudice in myself. And it's to me, when I tell somebody something's racist or something's prejudice, I feel a little hypocritical because I am also prejudiced. So yeah, like you're saying, different ways to work it out. I just don't know if this is something common in Christian communities. I have no idea. Or
yes, there are tons of people
really
there are tons of people, Christian or otherwise, who are similarly traumatized and triggered because of past abuse from people in the church, and they will extend that to other people in the church. There are people who are going to never trust another man, another white person, another black person, another woman, another anything. Pick a category. There's somebody out there who will never trust another person in that category because they are extending the trauma done by somebody else in that category to the other members of that. That's why I recommend seculartherapy.org, counseling of other things, so that you can start working through this, so that you don't have to take the warranted, justified baggage that your dad left you with and apply it to others who had no involvement in that at all. That's what you're trying, there's also the issues of, dealing with the actual baggage you're carrying with regard to your dad, but they can help you. There are people who have an expertise in helping you not expand that so that every member of a group is that. And you already recognize you're doing it. I think you're probably, at least by being aware and concerned that it's happening, I hope that you are on a path towards potentially healing. But yes, seculartherapy.org is my number one recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank
Jonah,
you,
we
Jonah.
hope the best for you.
Please. So there's a caller who kept popping up, and I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm going to suggest that while we wait on some more callers to queue up, lines are open. And so at this point, you're welcome to call in, I guess, about anything that you think would actually be useful and beneficial to the show. Not just, you guys are awesome, or you guys suck, or, I just wanted to say no, don't run the show with that. But as we prioritize theists, we've got some time left. I still want to get theists in. There's no promise that anybody will get in. But if you had questions that you wanted to ask, particularly from Aaron, who's not here every Sunday or almost every Sunday the way I am. But first, I want to deal with this call that came in because it popped up 2 or 3 times in a room. And that is, this caller from Germany said, does it matter if God or the supernatural are real if it benefits society? And so what I'm wondering right off the bat is, are they saying, so something that's not real can't benefit society? That I'm just going to say, in the realm of claiming something is impossible, it's not the thing that is unreal that benefits society. It's the beliefs about the thing that inform people's actions that benefit society. So it may be, and this is, I think, what they might have been getting to, even if there isn't a God, isn't it a fact that the people who believe in a God are better people or beneficial to society in some way? What do you think about that, Aaron?
In many ways, the way our society works is built upon things that aren't real but are socially agreed upon. Money is probably the most obvious social construct. That a piece of paper has quote unquote value only exists because we are willing to agree on its value and what we're willing to do for it or to exchange for it. But fundamentally, it's just a piece of paper. And it doesn't even necessarily have value for other people. If you grab a piece of currency from the colonial period for the United States, you're not going to be able to use it like you are regular currency. At best, you got something to take to the antique roadshow. And it's just because of the social conventions of what we're willing to accept and use in our monetary supply. Property is also that sort of thing. What we agree on is property, is basically social agreement. There were times that there was just common land that everyone could go and use, and then for better or for worse, there is now much more and more the idea of, no, things are owned privately, and the ultimate way of how we agree on who owns a thing is somebody comes along with a gun and says, no, here who actually owns it. And that's, in the extreme cases, but that's fundamentally how property rights work. We agree on things, and then we use some level of violence to enforce that. For better or for worse, these are the fictions that we have created that are useful. But the one thing is, most people don't say money is some sort of metaphysical entity that actually exists. When it comes to gods, the claim is that they exist in some other way, independent of the stories that we have created about them. So, do the stories themselves make society better or worse? Some stories perhaps better than others, but more fundamentally, how you come to those beliefs. If you come to those beliefs for bad reasons, you have a bad epistemology. Well, guess what? You have a bad epistemology. It's going to not give you reliable results, and you're not going to get a society you want if you have a bad mechanism for finding out what's true. And even worse, if that mechanism is then ripe for abuse by the worst sorts of people that will then use that bad epistemology to then put things that are bad for society but good for them. I don't think we have to say there are some cases of religious claims that have been harmful to most people but have enriched others. I think that does not need a huge amount of evidence to back up at this point. So if you want to claim religion or belief in the supernatural does things that are good, you have a tall order to show that that is even generally the case, or that there is no secular alternative to doing the same sorts of things. And of course, the gargantuan downsides that come along with having crappy beliefs that are used to enforce some of the worst things humans have done to each other.
It is. So first of all, I absolutely think that the truth matters. That whether or not something is true is important and significant. But I acknowledge that things that aren't actually true, if believed, that belief can have impacts on the world, both for good and ill. I think Aaron gave great examples about, the value of gold and the fiat money system and things. These are beliefs that we have that have huge impacts on how we act and everything else. And how we act and impacts others as well. And it determines what kind of world we're going to live in. I've said before, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And the short version of that is I want my internal model of reality to be as accurate as possible. I'd rather not have. I remember probably my all-time favorite cartoon, because I've mentioned it about 1 million times now, is the Disney cartoon from the 50s called Donald in Math Magic Land. It is absolutely wonderful. It's another eye-opening thing. And there's a moment where they go into Donald's brain and start sweeping and kicking up the dust. Oh, antiquated ideals and fallacies and all the dust that come up. He's coughing and sputtering and everything else. And I think that's what drove me to say, I don't want my brain to be like that. I would play a clip, but I don't even think I could put a screenshot up without Disney fucking shutting us down. Because Disney will shut down comedian hosts in a heartbeat. And I've already canceled my Disney and Hulu, so I don't have any other way to threaten them. But other than it was brilliant. And I said, I don't want my brain to be like that. If I believe something, I want to have a good reason. And if I don't have a good reason, not only should I not believe it, but I'm trying to train my brain so that it is impossible for me to believe it. Because belief is the state of being convinced that something is true or likely true. And you become convinced for reasons. Everyone is reasoned into every actual belief they have. It's just that sometimes the reasoning is good, sometimes the reasoning is flawed. And so you're like, how can you reason people out of beliefs they didn't come to believe, or reason into? They were reasoned into it by bad reasoning, and the cure is better reasoning to show the fallacies. And then they'll get to a point where their brain just can't accept this anymore. Now, that's about how you become convinced for good reason or bad reason. How you stay convinced is also a matter of good reason or bad reason. And the most common thing that I see in the 20 plus years that I've been doing this, for people who recognize that they believe something, a God, whatever, and that they don't have good reasons, but they just can't bring themselves to give it up, is that the sustaining of that belief is another belief that is also flawed. And most frequently, that belief is, holy crap, this is too risky for me to even acknowledge that I was wrong, because the stakes are too high. This is how you get to Pascal's wager. And, oh, well, if I'm wrong and I die, nothing happens. But if you're wrong and you die, you spend eternity in hell. You don't know that. Which hell are you avoiding, and which heaven are you seeking? Which religion has the answer that helps you avoid? Should you be trying to avoid the worst hell or get to the best heaven? And how do you know it's right? And the answer is always, the truth matters. If in fact there is an afterlife, if in fact there is some criteria by which you're going to be judged for an afterlife, all of your hemming and hawing and pearl clutching and Pascal's wagering that you're going to do are going to be irrelevant. Instead, we should look to see, do we have good reason to think there's an afterlife? Do we have good reason to think there's something that we can do differently about that afterlife? And then, should we do that? But when people say, oh, I was brought up believing, it's just absurd to me that so many people believe this and it could be wrong. And yet they believe that about all the other things that tons of people believe in are wrong. Yeah, well, I mean, I've been indoctrinated. I've believed it so long. I feel like I would be giving up a part of myself. And so I'm going to keep believing it. At that point, I would argue you do not believe that there is a God, but you believe in the belief that there's a God. You find value in professing that belief, even if you don't hold it. Because my position is that beliefs aren't voluntary. You are either convinced or you're not. And so, yes, I care about what's true. And oh, here we go. We got the call back. Let's try this again. So interestingly,
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we're here. This is Johannes, a theist, pronouns are him. We've been addressing your question, even though you weren't here. I don't know if you heard it or not.
Yes, I heard the question and you answered to it.
Cool.
Sorry, my English isn't the best. I'm from across the pond from Germany, so I called in from far away. I don't know if the quality is up to match.
It's a little scratchy, but please, what are your thoughts on what we've said, and what questions do you still have?
Well, you are a secular humanist, right?
I am, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe in the flourishing of human civilization through reason and other things, right?
I don't know that I made a statement about flourishing, but we'll just say essentially yes, and drop the language persnickety stuff.
It's just a question if it's a part of secular humanism to accomplish flourishing. So
Are you there?
Your audio cut out, caller. We're going to need you to pull your phone away from your face and tap the screen and then try talking again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me again?
Yep.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, the quality isn't the best. So my question to you was if the goal of secular humanism was to accomplish human flourishing.
I don't know that the goal is to necessarily accomplish human flourishing. The recognitions from the manifesto begin with even pronouncing it a religion initially, which was, as far as we can tell, we have to solve these problems on our own. So we're going to work together to solve these problems on our own. Flourishing may be one description, but at a minimum, it is a recognition that we are on this planet. We would like to live. We would like to live a better life, or at least not continue to make it worse. And so we're going to use the best methods to move towards the best life. Whether that counts as flourishing or not, I don't necessarily know. But I with that caveat, I'll just say yes.
Okay. So do you acknowledge that there's evidence for positive attributes that are correlated with religious belief? So, for example, religious believers are less likely to experience depression and other symptoms.
I'm
Um,
aware of that research, but there's a problem with it. And the problem is you can also get the same benefits in a non-religious setting. The benefit comes from having a sense of community. So
Community,
if
right?
you control
Yes.
for that, you realize it's not the religious beliefs that are bringing that happiness or reducing depression. It's having community. And you can have secular community. You could have community through bowling. Um, it may not have the same level of passion as saying someone died on the cross for you, but nonetheless, actually, I'll take that back. Some people get really passionate about bowling. I'm going to modify what I said.
All
But
right.
nonetheless,
So,
the
do you
thing
think?
that makes I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sure. Do you think there's a correlation in the spikes of depression after secularization after the 70s, for example?
So, first of all, correlation isn't causation. Second of all, I haven't bothered to look into the statistics on spikes in depression since the 70s. But at the end of the day, the only thing I care about is whether or not it's true. And can you think of a benefit that is tied to the truth of religion that cannot be achieved without that religion?
Well, I argue that it's harder to achieve by other means. So
I don't
argue
care.
that
I don't
may
care.
be.
No, Johannes. I don't care. That wasn't the question. That is a dishonest argument. First of all, you're suggesting that it's harder to achieve by other means when you don't have a way to demonstrate that. And to whatever extent it might be harder, it's because religions have made the world harder for people who aren't in religions. Governments often have de facto tax-free exemption, and communities have de facto assumptions about people who go to church being the good people to associate with, and people who don't go to churches being the bad people to avoid. I'm still talking. Meanwhile,
yes.
Yeah, the issue here is that if it's possible to achieve those things and it's a little more difficult, too bad, because religions come with a fuck ton of baggage, not the least of which is that I don't think good things should be built on a lie if they can be built on a truth. Because if they're built on a lie, when people discover that it's a lie, your entire foundation crumbles. You've built your house on a foundation of sand and not of stone, to borrow from the Bible. So I want benefits that are built on solid foundations and tied to the truth. I don't want convenient, comforting lies. I have more respect and admiration for people to not sit here and think, oh, there's some stupid and immoral people who really need religion. Meanwhile, there's nothing about secular humanism that advocates for end-time prophecies, wars, conflicts between religious groups, sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, all of the other baggage that comes with religion. If you think that you can get to a better world, which, by the way, we have in fact failed and continued to fail to do in many regards, by saying, you know what, it's easier to get people behave in a certain way if we just ignore the fact that we're shitting on gay people and women and people who are different from us. I'm not willing to accept that baggage. So my question stands: is there a benefit that is tied, that is both true and good, that is necessarily tied to the truth of the religion?
That's a hard question to answer. I just
It's an
think
easy
that
question.
if religion
It's an
isn't
easy question to answer. It's an easy question to answer. The answer is no.
well, can I also ask a question? You also asked me.
Go ahead. You have to
Johannes,
tap
your
your
phone
phone
just went
because
silent.
it's sleep again. You have to tap your phone again. You're muted yourself.
No. Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Yes.
What was your
Yes. Sorry for the sudden interruption. So my question was, if you don't think that religions will just be replaced by politics and other things that are tribal politics or tribal phenomenon that will still pit people against each other, even if religion isn't there.
Well, religion's
so
already
what?
very
I'm not
political.
talking. Yeah. I'm talking about secular humanism as my preferred platform or my preferred methodology, which doesn't do that. So you've called in to suggest that we should keep religion because it has utility. And when I counter that, you're like, well, if we get rid of religion, there'll just be political fights. Well, guess what? Aren't there already fucking political fights? How does that change anything?
I agree, but I think communism and fascism and all these other extreme political ideologies aren't made
honest
of religion.
Why do you believe in a God?
Why do I believe in a God? Because meaning itself isn't objective. It isn't something you can make up. It's something from beyond. It isn't.
What do you mean? What do you mean by meaning?
What do you base your worth of or the worth of existence itself on? Why should anything exist?
I don't think that existence has any intrinsic worth. Things have the worth and value that we imbue them with. I'm sorry. I was still talking. I'm sorry, but I was still talking. You've assumed that life has some intrinsic meaning, and I don't agree with you. My view is that life has tons of meaning, and it's because we imbue life with that meaning. What's wrong with my view? Why isn't my view better than pretending life has intrinsic meaning?
Because it's just made up. It's just made up.
I'm sorry.
meaning.
So
If
you're
you were
okay.
humble-
You're okay with making up something else so you can pretend like that's not made up too? I'm not buying it.
Well, why just not kill all gay people if existence is meaningless? Or why should you not kill yourself? Because why should you kill yourself?
Look at the dishonest interlocutor who can't have a conversation without immediately suggesting, hey, what's to keep you from killing all gay people? I can think of lots of reasons to not kill anyone, which is why I've denounced violence. Why do you not kill gay people, Johannes?
Because I'm a decent human being, I would say, and because I have compassion.
But what God do you think is real? The God of the Bible?
I think many religions have many truths about the one true God, but no one nails it down to a perfect image of him. It's just beyond the scope of human comprehension.
How do you know, Johannes? How do you know whether or not the God you believe in wants you to kill gay people or not?
Holy Scripture.
What Holy Scripture? The Bible that says if a man lies with another man as he lies with a woman, they've committed an abomination and deserving of death? That Holy Scripture? Go the fuck away, Johannes. You're not ready for this. Nope. Goodbye. I have nailed you in your dishonesty most thoroughly. Thank you for playing. I'm sorry that you decided to bounce around and completely, utterly failed to acknowledge the truth of reality while making a utilitarian argument that decided you would be best served by suggesting, what's the reason to not just run around killing gay people? I don't know. What's the reason to not be running around killing anybody? I think it's not that nothing about your assertion that there's a God that gives all life intrinsic value has no more merit than any other idea, except that when I say there is no intrinsic value, but I'm going to value life and people, even as a purely pragmatic decision, because I have to share space with people like you. I'm stuck sharing space with people like you. And so it's in my best interest to agree. I'm not going to try to kill you or take your stuff if you agree not to kill me and take my stuff. And we can then work together to create a civilization because we know that we can all live better and survive better and potentially thrive better if we agree that we're going to value each other's lives and existence. That's it. It doesn't matter if you think it came from a God or I recognize that I am only doing this to ascribe it. When I asked you why you wouldn't do it, you said, because you're a decent human being. That's my answer too. Because I'm a decent human being. My answer is not, I'm not going to kill people because God doesn't like it. My answer is not, I'm not going to kill people because God gave life some intrinsic value. I'm not going to kill people because I'm a decent human being who recognizes both in a pragmatic sense that we are living cooperatively and need to respect each other's rights and have a shared dignity and shared resources and cooperation. We know this from prisoner's dilemmas, from game theory. But even if there wasn't a pragmatic sense, I also have a heart. And I mean this in the metaphoric sense, not just the one that pumps blood that the doctors worked on. I have a picture of that one on my refrigerator. I mean a metaphoric, philosophical heart, which is I have empathy and compassion, and I can see when people are wounded, and it hurts me. And this is something that we need to not only foster, but encourage others to talk about more, because there's nothing about it that is an imperative. It's not a categorical imperative from the universe that we care about other people, but we do, and it is consistent with best practices, both for our survival and for the survival of everyone else around us. That's the reason to care about people. If you only do it because you think there's a God that gave life intrinsic value, then I respectfully reject the notion that you're doing it because you're a good human. That's doing it because somebody trained you to have an excuse to do it, rather than recognizing the actual good reason, which is that if the goal is to live a better life, I live a better life with people in it. I live a better life because Aaron's in it. I live a better life because Arden's in it. I live a better life because all these other people. And I know somebody out there's like, do you live a better life because Trump's in it? Yes, I do. I don't live a better life because Trump is doing things that hurt my life, but those things also drive me to stand up against the encroachment of a fascist government trying to censor free speech and declare people as a terrorist and things like that. That, in the short term, makes my life better, but it gives me a goal and a focus to work towards alongside with other people so that the next generation's life doesn't have to be this bad, and that people can stop forgetting the harm that's done so that it happens again and again. It makes me so sad that instead of having an honest conversation after multiple calls where you're like, oh, I see that now, but what about this? Anytime we'd push back, it was, well, there needs to be intrinsic value. No, there doesn't. The only thing that needs to matter is value. There's no intrinsic value to that piece of paper that I got my lottery ticket on when it was up to, I don't know, 2 billion or whatever it was. That piece of paper has no intrinsic value. And it only has potential value if, in fact, those numbers come up. And it only has that value because we care about money. Other bits of paper, based on, as Aaron was saying, a fiat declaration of value. How wild.
I also need to point out some irony from the caller, because he was talking about, like, hey, if we don't have religion, then we'll fight over politics. And it's like, the major political party right now, one of the major political parties in Germany is the CDU, the Christian Democrats. So politics and religion kind of already intrinsically linked there. And of course, from a little bit of knowledge of European and German history, the 30 Years' War, which was in large part a conflict over Catholics and Protestants, really tore up the various German city-states and regions, well, for a really long time, as the name 30 Years' War implies. I think it's a very terrible thing to forget that and think that somehow religion doesn't actually have any connection to politics or political violence.
All right, so we got a couple more calls to get to today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and waiting everything else. Let's see. Jamie is a Buddhist calling back. Welcome back, Jamie.
Yeah.
You called from earlier, and I'm going to warn you, Jamie.
Yeah.
I appreciate the call, and I appreciate you calling back, but I just read what the call screener says the call is about. And I'm going to warn you in advance that I am on high guard, and I suspect that you are a prank caller of epic proportions, but I'm open to being proven wrong. It says here that you say Is evidence for vampires more convincing than evidence for God from the Bible? What is it you're talking about?
I'm reading a book called Crazy Wisdom by Chokyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and what's weird about it is there's a monkey talks out, and he says the guy just ups and leaves and goes to a continent of vampires, and he still lives there, which is, that's kind of outrageous. But I was thinking that comparative evidence, since there's so much pop culture about vampires and things like that, doesn't that mean that there's more and better evidence in the Bible?
No.
I would say having more examples of fiction doesn't make the fiction more real. Let's put it this way.
All right.
I'm a really big fan of Godzilla. If they make another Godzilla film, that doesn't make the probability that Godzilla existed and attacked Tokyo in 1954 increase at all.
Yeah. The Avengers didn't become more probable just because they're going to continue the series of movies.
I understand that. But
what I don't understand, Jamie, the book that you're reading, did they suggest this happened in reality, that somebody went to go live with vampires?
Yes.
You need to read better books. You need to read better books. And I'm reluctant to say this because it's going to sound mean. Jamie, you are incredibly gullible if you're being serious, and don't seem to have been given really good tools on how to explore reality to find out what's real or not. That's probably not your fault if you're being sincere. I would stay away from looking into anything pseudoscience-y or spiritual or anything that references stuff like that, cryptids, anything, until you got a better grounding in how to tell the difference between reality and between truth and fiction. Because you're calling in for the second time today with, hey, I heard some people perform miracles. What do you think about that? And then now you're calling in, hey, I heard somebody say somebody went to live with vampires. It's like, that old saying about believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. You seem to be running on the, I hear a lot of things and I don't, without ever seeing anything, just kind of run with it. And you got to kind of stop that. It's dangerous.
Oh. No. Is all religion like that?
I don't know. I don't know all religion. But it's not just religions that are like that. Every claim has to establish and meet a burden of proof and be supported by reasoned evidence before it's worth believing. It's not just religions. People think have lucky rabbit's foots and lucky socks when they go bowling. We've got superstitions and there are people who believe vaccines cause autism, despite the fact that the evidence shows that's not the case. People don't understand the null hypothesis. They don't understand testing methodology. They don't know when presented with. I just watched Hank Green the other day talk about some information set forth about autism, and it reminded me of A Numeracy by John Allen Paulus, because what Hank did was he went through and he said this just wasn't making sense, and so he went through all of the studies, and then when he realized that the studies were based on these other studies, he had to go through all of those, and it turns out that the true statement that was made by our government about autism was a statement about this aggregate study. And my apologies to Hank and everybody else for whatever I get wrong from this. I'm doing it from memory. But the statement was technically true. But when you go look at the studies, the reason for the variance was because the standards for the studies changed. And so there's like 2 studies done with this standard, then 3 studies done with this standard, and then 3 studies done with another standard. And so instead of acknowledging that the standards changed, like we use different, essentially analogous to measuring devices, instead of acknowledging that, they just focused on the change in the data results without noticing the change in the collection methods. Just like we know that the prevalence of autism diagnosis increases after we first diagnosed it. That doesn't mean there weren't autistic people before then. It just means we didn't have the ability to diagnose it. And so you might as well be talking about, oh, somebody said there's vampires and people keep talking about vampires. Yeah. And you know what else they talk about? Dragons and fairies and wizards and a million other things, because we like stories. And the time to believe any of those claims is when they move out of the realm of here's a story we're talking about to here, this has been reported by the news and is now appearing in a scientific journal, subject to peer review, that sort of thing. And if that doesn't happen, then it's just a cool story, maybe.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks for
Yep. Thanks.
Do you know any resources for cryptid stuff? I find that interesting to read about. Not believing them.
No, I will not give you sources for cryptids.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. I love this stuff so much that, I've been obsessed with the weird stuff my entire life. Somewhere around here, right next to me, there was a book. I've got an entire encyclopedia of oddities stuff. Yeah, somebody in chat just said, hey, lizards are real. I would recommend, you want to see, you don't have to go out of the realm of the real to find curious creatures. Like, go subscribe. I'm going to have you subscribe to a Mormon who I absolutely adore and is brilliant. And yet I'm still baffled, like several other Mormons, that he's a Mormon, but whatever. Go subscribe to Clint's Reptile Room. Clint is a zoologist who is a Mormon and yet posts videos countering creationist claims. But he will occasionally go through incredibly weird creatures to see if he can identify them or if he's ever seen them before and things like this. And when you get down in the depths of the ocean, that might as well be outer space. Some of the stuff we're coming from there, things that can survive in incredibly super pressurized situations and environments that be hostile to anybody else. Go enjoy those weird creatures that are actually real. There's way more real creatures on Earth that are interesting and bizarre than you would ever be able to explore in a lifetime. Why isn't that good enough? Why isn't it enough to say, wow, look at all the species of flowers with all their different colors, and they're just amazing and beautiful, and they smell nice. And instead of exploring the process by which those evolved and how they interact with their ecosystem and which ones work with which animals and which ones are good for bees or which ones are good for birds, instead of doing any of that, you instead want to find out if there's actually fairies tending to those flowers. Apologies to whoever first came up with that analogy, because I've forgotten the name, but I get the fascination with the weird and unusual. But there's a lot of really cool, weird, and unusual stuff in the world without going to stuff that, I always wondered when the Bigfoot meets another Bigfoot, do they present them with flowers on their first date, or do they do something else? You're putting the cart a mile in front of the horse because there's no Bigfoot to investigate right now. And yet, you could look at the mating practices of birds and animals and chimps. But
can you check your messages for me on Messenger?
I can check all of my messages.
While you're doing that, the thing about the fairies, there was fairies at the bottom of the well, and I think that was from Douglas Adams.
Ah, yes. Okay. So we have 16 minutes left, and we've got a couple of calls here, both from atheists. So John's calling first from California, runs a him John wants to talk to us about how much we can blame Christians for Trump. Wow. A little bit?
Hello? Can you hear me?
A lot?
Hello?
Yes, we
Hello?
can.
hear you.
You can. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, good to be on the line. Yes, I'm just trying to deal with Trump being president and trying to figure out how this happened. And so I go through in my mind, kind of analytically, assigning blame. Like, well, one theory would be we just weren't ready for a woman to be president because he went up against two women and beat them. But I assign blame to religion for a lot of things. Can we just add, do you think, the fact that Trump became president, we can blame religion for that? I think they at least had a big contribution.
I would want to be more precise and say a particular form of religion, since there were plenty of religious people on the left and saying no to Trump and yes more for Harris, and there were plenty of religious people that said no to Harris, more for Trump. So just to be more precise, I don't want to say religion a la carte. It's a form of Christianity that basically went gung-ho for Trump. And I think the polls was like something like, what, 80+% of evangelicals were for Trump? I forget the exact numbers, but it's something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Well, I was thinking of it in terms of just the religion in general, like the dogmatic thinking that goes along with being religious and being susceptible to being told and led on how to vote, basically.
So
being in that mindset.
That's not caused by religion. That's what religion is caused by in many regards.
Right. And so I know that in the Bible Belt, for example, he enjoys.
I'm sorry.
Trump
I'm
enjoys
sorry,
a lot
John.
of support.
I'm sorry, John. I just rebutted your point, and you just said, I know, and then went right on again. I'm saying you can't blame religion for an authoritarian mindset if it's an authoritarian mindset that leads to religion. You blame the mindset because not every religious person falls into that. Not every Christian falls into that. And there's authoritarian mindsets that where people aren't a part of religion. If you're going to talk about the problem, you've got to talk about the problem and not blame the other things that are caused by that.
Okay, so you want to get back and assign blame to the what did you say? The authoritarian thinking, dogmatic thinking.
I'm saying that if that's the path you're going to go, then the problem is authoritarian thinking and not the religion, which is also a spawn from it. It's like, if I itch and I have a wound and they're both caused by the cancer, you don't blame the itch for the wound.
Okay. Well, then let's replace that with authoritarian thinking.
Okay. I don't think that's entirely to blame either. I think it's a complex, robust system of some authoritarian thinking and a lot of hate and bigotry and some religious ideology, because it's not just Christianity. There's an incredibly pro-Israel sect that ties into Judaism and Christianity, propping up bad policies and ignoring a genocide in Gaza. There are tons of things that contributed to this. I don't know that you can put a quick button on it, but there are Christians who are absolutely opposed to Trump. I don't know why. And there are Christians that are absolutely worshiping Trump. I think I do know why. But why are we sitting here trying to figure out? Well, all right, I'll let you continue, John. I'm just confused.
Well, I associate all that what we were saying to the religious mindset. I know it's not 100%. I know that there are Christians who oppose Trump, but he really does enjoy a very high percentage of support from the Bible Belt. There has to be something to that.
And yet there are plenty of atheists who do as well, including some former friends and associates of mine.
I know that. It's not 100%.
So if you know all that,
percentage.
John, you called in to say, how much can we blame Christians for Trump? And the answer is none of us have any fucking clue, and that's a waste of time question.
All right. Okay. That's fine. Well, that's what I had to say. Hey, could I mention the book that I have written?
No. I knew it.
We try not to run ads on the show.
All right. Here we go. Donovan is calling from Canada, fine with any or all pronouns, with a question about utility arguments for religion. Hey, Donovan, how are you?
Sounds familiar.
Hey, man. Doing great. Yourself?
Annoyed.
Fair. Listen, I got background noise, whether I'm inside or outside. I'm trying to keep it minimal. But yeah, with these callers, they're saying, if this or not, can it have utility? You've made a great argument that as soon as anybody knows it's a lie, they're now throwing the baby out the bathwater. Even if they had good things attached, those good things are probably gone, not just the bad things, right? So instead, why aren't people looking to utility of honesty, utility of rational thinking? Like, I don't get it. Empathy.
Do you think? So I used to be, and I forget, Aaron. Have you been atheistic, secular your entire life, or did you have? I've forgotten if you had a religious background as well.
Oh yeah, Catholic background. I dumped that when I was in college.
Yeah. Do you think, Donovan, that when I was 23 and a fundamentalist Christian, that I thought I was irrational?
No, I don't.
No. And there's your answer.
No.
They think they are
But that's
rational.
what I'm saying. Right. They think they are rational. And so, but to come in with literally we had just had a caller that said, whether it's true or not, it has utility.
Yeah, but he also believes it's true.
Sure, I guess. Yeah.
But there, to be fair, there are people who don't think it's true, but think it has utility. And I find those people to be arrogant, condescending assholes. And I tell them that because inevitably their argument is, hey, I don't need religion. I'm above it. But there's other little people who do. And I find that to be incredibly crude and dismissive. But for the people who say, I believe that religion's true, but I can't prove it to you, so let me at least show you that there's utility in it. This is exactly what you remember earlier today. You might not have heard it, but I talked about these debate pros like Michael Jones and David Wood and Than Christopoulos and all these other guys that I called out that are spending their time arguing with Muslims because Islam is easy fucking pickings. You've got a holy book that is put out by, a warmongering pederast, and
not the first.
Then you have a bunch of really bad ideas. I think Sam Harris called it the mother load of bad ideas. The problem is that Christianity is also a mother load of bad ideas, but since they can't demonstrate that Christianity is true or good, they instead go after Islam because they can convince people, hey, our version of bullshit is better than your version of bullshit. And once you're already a believer, that's the easier path. And actually, it's a Muslim imam whose name I've forgotten that first, I think, made that point popular, which is, and he did it in a bit of a joke, because he said a slightly different thing, which is he'd rather engage with an atheist than with a Christian, because the Quran says there is no God but Allah, and the atheist says there is no God, so we're halfway there, which I think is an incredibly clever, although admittedly even he recognizes it's wholly irrational. It was just a joke. But there is a strategy involved in these sorts of things about if I can't prove to you that mine is true, I can at least show you that it's better. And that's why I think they go to utility.
Well, I've heard that. I think up on specifically is the, whether it's a lie or not, and that's like the thing that buckles my brain. Because you're right, is that it all collapses as soon as that. Yes, no, fair enough. I'm trying to understand them and asking you to help me. That is not necessarily what I should be calling about. So,
well, yeah. First of all, I think part of the problem is that it's not really easy to define who the them is that we're trying to understand. It would be really cool. I mean, it's kind of like with the last caller, as Aaron was pointing out, that as we both did, that you can't just say, oh, it's Christian, oh, it's religion, oh, it's this. The reality is we have a number of psychological problems with humanity. We have both a need for and a distrust for authority. We have both a need for and some very broken and therefore distrusted communities. We have a desire to be good and right, most of us, and yet we don't always have the tools that we need to figure out what is good and right, in part because once you get a community where everybody around you agrees with, hey, we're the ones who are right, there's no point in challenging that, because if you say, are we really the ones who are right? You risk immediately losing all of the benefits of being part of that community as well. Ostracization happens, shunning. There are religions that are more explicit at what they do to people when they kick them out or when those people leave. So you're not free. I'm not aware of any religion where you are truly free to say, Judaism comes close in some regards, to say, I don't believe any of the trappings of this religion at all, and there aren't consequences to that. And I know that, at least with some of my friends who are Reform Jews, who are atheists, that quite often it is we're going to go to temple and we're going to rise up when we talk about God, and we're going to do the traditions because it's a cultural thing, even though we don't actually believe in the religion. That baffles me, but not completely. I understand the value of community. I understand the desire to have ties to one's heritage and culture. I just don't share it. I couldn't give a fuck about my heritage or culture or what my ancestors did in the past. The past is the past. I'm sorry for the ones that fucked it up and made it worse. I take no credit on behalf of those who might have made things better. I'm concerned about right now, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and that's every stinking day. I know that some of my ancestors formed one of the first 3 churches in the Southern Baptist Convention. It's a source of amusement, but it has no bearing on me at all. And I get it. I don't come from a sidelined, marginalized group of oppressed people trying to maintain a link to my heritage. And so I have the privilege of being able to completely ignore it. We got to wrap up here in a minute, Donovan, but I wanted to let you get one last thought in if you needed to.
Yeah, I want to be clear, I guess, on them. It's the callers. I mean, specifically. I'm not saying religious people. I'm saying apologists, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah.
If that.
I have no way of knowing if
better.
any of the callers are even sincere.
And I would say a lot of the apologetics out there is also more performative than anything. It's trying to show, look how rational we are rather than we actually have good reasons. By performing rationality, it keeps the community together. So I think when you see an apologist make an argument, don't think of it as a logical demonstration. Think of it as the magician pulling a rabbit out of their hat. It's a performance.
I put you on mute because I've got to let you go, but I appreciate the call, Donovan. I'm going to go ahead and drop that now. I've got announcements to wrap up, and we have like a minute and some change. So first of all, huge thanks to Aaron, and I greatly appreciate you sticking through this episode for reasons you well understand. But not only is today's Sunday show one of many opportunities to call the line, there's another one later tonight. Tonight's Sunday show is going to be Forrest and Justin. I think Lux is producing it. We got people working and producing and doing good stuff. There's a lot going on here on the line. We hope that the encroachments on our freedoms and rights don't end or put at risk any of these shows here. But Monday, Skeptalk, 6 p.m. Central. Forrest and Paul will be on to take your questions about science, pseudoscience, religion, whatever. And then Tuesday night's episode of Chewed Gum has got Alyssa and Erica Gibbon on to talk about women's issues from a secular perspective in a culture that is patriarchal and has purity culture and all kinds of absolute crap. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to all of our moderators, to Arden for producing, all of our call screeners. Don't forget about LineCon Online. You can go to patreon.com/calltheline. And if you join at the $15 or higher tier, you'll get access to the LineCon online. You can also go to linemerch.com to buy cool stuff. In the meantime, go do something good. It's worth it. All on its own.
For goodness sake.